Repeat after me. You get the picture, okay? I don't want to say anything. Are we ready, Jen? Right, good evening, everyone. Board of Directors, everybody in the audience, thank you for being here, as well as those of you attending online. It is now 5:48, and I will now call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We all have the agenda before us. If there are not any changes, I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you.
I second that.
All right, all in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. So at this time, we will administer the oath of office to our newly appointed board member for position 1, Lisa Carr. Lisa, please stand and repeat after me. I
I, Lisa Heisler Carr,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
Constitution of the State of Oregon,
and the laws thereof,
and the laws thereof,
and the policies of the Woodburn School District.
and the policies of the Woodburn School District.
During my term,
During my term,
I will faithfully
I will faithfully
and impartially discharge the duties
and impartially discharge the duties
of the office
of the office
of the school board member
of a school board member
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Welcome. All right, moving on to next public comment. We do not have public comment today. Moving on to work session. We have a calendar first reading.
In your packet tonight, you'll find you'll find a report of the first reading of the drafts of the calendar for the next 2 years. And this is based on a collaborative effort from the district and both of our associations. So this time I'd like to invite up Nikki Tucker, Director of Human Resources, Tony Salm, President of the and Misha, sorry, both of them, President and Vice President of the Woodburn Education Association, and Debbie Bollinger, sorry, that's slipping my tongue, just joining us, the President of our local chapter of the OSCA. And I want to applaud this group as we launched this effort. It was really a collaborative one as we worked together to think about what do we need to hear back from our community, what do we need to hear back from our staff, from our families, so that we can make as best informed decision on the recommendation for the calendar, thinking about a calendar that's going to work for the needs of our entire community. And so tonight we'll be kind of walking through what that process looked like and some of that data that was gathered and the draft of the proposed calendar. We'd like to get this out to the board. It's public now for the community, have an opportunity to hear feedback. So with the intent of bringing it back later this month with the idea of adopting it then, so that there's a lot of stuff that hinges on the calendar from master scheduling all the way down to the start of like our pre-kinder classrooms in August. So it's important for us to kind of get this adopted as quickly as possible. And I want to applaud this team for their work to engage in this collaborative effort together.
Okay, so we're going to go through the results of our survey. The survey went out to staff and families. It's pretty straightforward. So in total, we had 577 responses, and you can see the breakdown there with the family responses at 372 and the staff at 205. And then the breakdown of what level their children were in of the responders. So one of the questions on the survey was asking whether you wanted to start the school year before Labor Day or after Labor Day. And this is looking at the results as a whole. So as you can see, the before Labor Day was ahead, but not by a ton, but they agreed that they want to start before Labor Day. And if at any time you have any general questions of the group, feel free to speak up. The next question is during Thanksgiving week, whether we wanted to have any school days during that week or work days during that week. And again, this is the result of both staff and family averaged together. And then this slide talks about the late start Wednesdays. The question was around whether you wanted to go back to late start Wednesdays, continue with the full day professional development days that we are currently using, and then potentially look at half-day staff development. So have students in the morning, and then they would go home, and then we'd have staff development for a half-day. And so that's the results of those questions with both groups. And so the full days have far more people chose that as well. And so the next few slides will break it down by the two different categories. So first looking at the family results, them specifically, you can see that it's, it's really close 50-50 as far as the Labor Day question. And again, the week of Thanksgiving, I mean, there is definitely a little bit of difference there, but they're pretty close. And then the question around the full day staff development versus those late start Wednesdays or the half day option. And the full days are, much higher percentage for that one. Now, moving to the staff results. Again, same questions, before or after Labor Day. Before Labor Day was well ahead, 58%. And then talking about the Thanksgiving week, so a partial week of school, which currently we use those couple staff development days there, or we have this year. And then the last one is talking about the full days, late starts, half days. And again, the full days is at 46%. I think the families, if I remember, was up at 50 something. So that's the end of the data piece. You want to pull up the calendar?
Yeah, the intent there was to try to find some of those like key features that our families and staff are seeking in a calendar, so that those features can be incorporated into the development of the actual days on the calendar.
Yeah, is there a way to pull up the 25, 26 up there so folks can, it's in your packet, so. Okay, well, I didn't know if you wanted to show it online at all. Well, you have it in front of you in your packet, so I'll talk about that a little bit, whether we want to pull this up or not. But following the preferences in the survey, Debbie built these calendars, and then we all reviewed it, and then shared it also with your members from both unions to get feedback there. And so this was a very collaborative process to be sure that everybody had a chance to share their opinions and preferences for the calendar. So if you look at 25, 26, you can see that we followed that. And in August, started school before Labor Day. And then moving to Thanksgiving week, again, having a couple days in there for the staff development. And you can see on those Mondays again that we had the full day, the days in pink throughout the calendar for those full days of staff development. So it's very similar to this year. Are there any questions on that, or is there anything that you all want to share in addition to that?
As you created this calendar, did you take into consideration the Russian community? Is that reflective at all on these calendars?
On these calendars? There weren't any questions around the Russian community in the survey.
Well, whether there was no questions or not, but usually they have holidays they celebrate.
Well, that just causes a lot of students to miss right after Christmas break because they're going to be out for another additional 2 days. But I have a question in regards to, you have a breakdown of family responses. Do you have a breakdown of staff responses versus elementary, middle school, and high school staff?
We didn't present it in that way. I can't remember if the survey had that demographic to there. I don't know. I don't have the computer in front of me for that.
Are you looking? I'm
As
sorry.
far as the age level.
No, just staff-wise from primary to secondary and high school staff responses. Because we all know there's more staff than 208, and that's just like 10% possibly of staff who's responded to these.
No,
But-
it's more than that, but I don't know
The
if you
survey,
have that.
the survey didn't break it down by level of staff, but the survey was sent out multiple times by the district, by each association to members. So there were multiple opportunities for staff who wanted to provide feedback on it. So there's several times that it was pushed out. There are about 700-ish staff in the district, so we've had about a
That's a-
third.
So do our staff not care about what the calendar looks like? I'm just curious.
Well, we sent it out and we gave the opportunity for folks to share. And I don't know what kind of direct discussions the union had with their members.
We discussed that at rep council. That's a reference. Oh, sorry. We discussed that at rep council and people had feedback, and then also in impromptu conversations with our members at our building levels. Usually if it's something that reps bring back, it's something that we address. The thing that came up most frequently was just the appreciation of the full day PD days, because it didn't break up instruction as much. And it meant that, you know, it didn't have these weird sort of in between days where you had kids, but then you also had PD, and, you know, it's a hard way to orient yourself. And also just a general appreciation for the November week for personal PD. The feedback that we get is that a lot of the members really enjoy the PDs that they receive from other members. That's very much centered on Woodburn and the community, from people who've been teaching here and who are experienced here. And then just an appreciation for how that was organized. So that's most of the feedback we got. So most of the feedback oriented in regards to members has more to do around instruction and then also the content of the PD days. And also I would just say that having done lots of survey work, that generally speaking, this kind of response rate is actually quite good. When the association gives response of our 320 members, we're usually running in the realm of about 80 to 90 of our members. And that's with a lot of push out and organizing around those issues.
And so how many staff members, so classified versus certified, submitted the survey? You don't have a breakdown of,
We have 320 licensed
Right.
members, and then I don't know how many classified. but I think-
288.
Yeah, we didn't really fixate on the specific numbers of the turn back, but I think in regards to just to like, you know, response rates, this is pretty solid.
And we, they got it in the staff promise twice, and then I sent the survey out to all classified 2 additional times. We talked about it at our chapter meeting, and they also appreciate the full day PDs. And the one thing with classified employees is when you do a late start or early release, they don't get to take advantage of the PD because usually they're doing the childcare. And they are an integral part of this district and making it function, and they need PD as much as everybody else does. And there just never has been an opportunity until we went to these full days. So they really appreciate that, and being able to work with teachers and other people that are in their same job title. And, like the cooks get to do PD, the custodians can do PD, the homeschool contacts can do PD. In the Welcome Center, we do individual PD. I do PD for classified secretaries. And they just really appreciate being included because in the other ways we've had it, it's very, not very inclusive for classified. So.
I just want to echo what Misha was saying about survey results. I think if we sent out a survey asking people if we get too many surveys, we'd get an overwhelming response saying that, yes, we get too many surveys. So, when we're doing our own surveys on other kinds of issues, we have to send it out. We send it out repeatedly, have to remind people. And it's not because people are not, don't want to be involved or don't want to, it's just that people are feeling so many other responsibilities. So it just takes a lot of reminders, and this is a pretty good rate in terms of surveys for us.
Yeah, I would say as well that it's a good rate for us.
Hi, I would like to make a point that I confirm that is a high rate of returns if you do any form of research, let alone America's voting habits. I think that's pretty high participation, so I appreciate that.
I wanted to add as well, the questions that we sent out were developed as a group. And so we were all at the table and kind of pared it down to these things that are usually the sticklers and the main components. So that's where those came from.
I would like to say, as a parent and talking to other parents, getting rid of the late start Wednesdays has been a huge help, because finding partial daycare is very difficult, and finding a full day versus not at all is really helpful. So and the data shows that too. So
Yeah, that was pretty clear.
We did talk about like maybe moving those days, but in talking to parents and stuff, even staff that are parents, like having it next to like a work day where they can like be at grandma's and just stay at grandma and grandpa's, or, doing that childcare was very helpful as well.
Yeah.
I'd just like to comment that, we're all wanting to improve attendance. And if I know that the Russian community is only 10%, the Old Believer Orthodox, but due to the fact that there's so much holidays, and if those things are not considered, those are holidays that do bring down the attendance, because if we combine them all in a 12-month period, that's 3 months of consistency of kids not being in school, and that really does bring down the attendance, kind of brings down the whole school, the whole district.
So Rosie, I have a question. What specific holidays are we talking about? Because
Easter, Christmas, birth of St. Mary,
right. So what days would that impact?
Monday through Friday. Or primarily Christmas, January 7th, January 8th,
Okay.
Easter, which is 5 days, and that varies. It could, this year it'll be April 21st, the week of the 21st. And right away, the reason why I say that is because being a graduate of the high school of Woodburn, right after Easter, right after April, parents are getting these consistent letters of, okay, your kids need to be in school more often because they've missed so-and-so. But prior to that, nobody gets any notification because they're there all the time. Maybe they'll miss day here, day there, and they all try to attend even after they go to church at 3 in the morning, and then they go to school at 7 in the, they'll be in school at 8 o'clock. The concept is people don't understand that we are in church for 5 hours in the morning, and our kids have to be there in order to stay in the community, stay in the culture.
Right.
And, we are in modern America, so we have to incorporate all of everything, the lifestyle and the learning being up to par. So our kids, like we all want our kids to graduate, be ready to be in the workforce, in the trade force, in the college force. But the fact of the matter is that we all have to integrate our community. Our culture here is so diverse that, there's days given for Cinco de Mayo and fiesta days and so forth. But even though our community's been here since 1970s, 60s, it kind of got washed under.
So when did that change? Because
never changed.
previously, Well, previously there was, the holidays were accommodated through 90s, I believe,
2000s also.
through the 2000s. So
So would it be helpful is, I don't know if your community has a calendar that we can share?
Well, there's a calendar,
And
yeah.
then this is a first reading, so they'll come back.
Yeah. And I,
Maybe that's something that we can share with them.
and the calendar's updated every year, and I will definitely share it with Jenny and Juan and superintendent, and because it's updated for not this year, but for the next following 2 years, just like this calendar is, so that way it can incorporate it with it.
Yeah, an idea might be if you could share that, Rosie, and we're just Googling here too. And there's maybe some flexibility on when those work days land so that we move some of those work days on some of those the 20th, I think we're looking at in April. Maybe there's a space where we can move on some of
Yeah.
those monthly PD days to
This is for 2026. So Russian Easter in 2026 is Sunday the 5th.
try to minimize some of the absences.
Yeah, for next year, I'm not sure about 2026, but 2025, it's the week of the 20th, so,
April 20th.
yeah. And thanks to modern technology, we even have apps. So,
We could take that feedback into consideration, come back and look at those dates and look at where some of that PD time could be moved to, and then when we bring it back.
and I do understand that the students do not attend all primary, secondary, or high schools. Well, of course, high school, but like, for instance, it doesn't affect Washington School because there's no kids. If there is, maybe there's like 1%, and majority of them do go to like Nellie Mere and Heritage, and who knows, a small percentage still go to Lincoln, depending on their residency, of course. Yeah, so,
So we'll
I-
add that for this.
yeah, and I can share, like I say, with all the apps that are available for all avenues of our lifestyle. So as with our holidays and interpretation of what they mean, meaning importance, such as, okay, kids can go, they try to attempt to go to the smaller day holidays, or for instance, perfect example, last week on the 7th, we had a funeral early in the morning, and then we had another memorial that evening. And it's like, people have situations in their communities, but we do try to incorporate that our children do not lose our cultural ways. And it's the same thing as with the Hispanics. And like I say, we all want our kids to not lose our roots, no matter what.
Right.
Thinking about that, do we have any other communities or cultures or religions that we need to be sensitive and think about as well, in addition to the Orthodox community?
Yeah.
Because there may be others.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Keep that in mind.
I think those are all important feedback for the group to take into consideration as we kind of bring back and make adjustments for the second reading at February 24th.
Any other questions, or is that?
Is this the end?
Yeah, we're just presenting the calendars for your consideration and
Mhm.
gathering questions. If questions come up
Um,
before
I-
we leave.
Sure, I have questions. So I heard the appreciation for personal development and those full days. I'm just curious if you can share with me what attendance looks like on those days.
So on those days, the absences do go up a little bit. Our average is around 10, 11% absenteeism. and they're around 14% on those days.
What about during Thanksgiving week?
I don't have that down off the top of my head. I looked at them as a whole. So it
Mhm.
does go up a little bit. But there's also, some of the feedback that was given to me is sometimes folks do choose those days because it doesn't impact students. So there's kind of yes, we are providing staff development, and also they are considering that is that a better day to have an appointment? So I'm, not causing absence
Right.
in the system. So it's, there's a few ways to look at that number.
I know, and I understand that, right? There's that
Mhm.
direct contact with students and when to choose other things that are happening. But also I think on those professional development days, if somebody's team is missing and it's just one person, how do you plan to implement when you do see your kiddo the next day? So it's like, how do we create a balance to be able to do both is more of my question. And you don't have to answer now. It's just, I think, a reflective question.
I had a question with regards to the before or after Labor Day start. Um, so the family result was prefers after, and then school was before, correct? Partial, I'm looking at starting school before Labor Day or after day. And let's see, when I look at the total, okay, there it is. So it is the school, so in conjunction of family and school, we get the majority prefer of the people responding prefer before school, correct? That's what I'm reading? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry,
Yep.
I-
No, you're fine.
yeah. I guess that was my clarification. Thank you.
No.
Other questions? We don't have additional questions.
Okay, well, if something comes up after the fact, please share with Juan and we can collect some more information and include that in our next discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, team, for your collaboration on this.
Next item on the agenda is the monitoring session. Rose, can you take that and pass that down?
Yeah, you can pull it up. Everyone. Well, I'll invite up our panelists, our principals, who are going to be walking us through a little bit of the work and the highlighting. Thank you. Yeah, put it to Peter. And what I just passed around was just a snapshot, kind of reminder of where this kind of originated from. And so as a district, we have our strategic plan. Our strategic plan has these three broad overarching goals of each student will graduate and prepare to pursue college, career options, and success in life is our first goal. And within that, you see some objectives down below. And so tonight we're presenting a high-level overview of progress being made on these adopted metrics towards the goals on our strategic plan. So we'll be hearing tonight from the packet that accompanied the little strategic plan document, the progress that we're making towards each of these for the first goal and the second goal around fostering our culture of engagement and partnerships. Back in November, we did a first look at what the progress was looking like. Now we come back at the second quarter, second semester, and take a look at where we are continuing to make progress in those. So tonight, our team is going to be walking us through each of these metrics that we adopted back in August, and we'll be sharing and highlighting some of the outstanding work and the goals that we're on track for. I'm really proud of the work that's being done and how we are on track to reach many of our goals. And the year's not over, so we'll continue to adjust and monitor and come back to and present this again at the end of the year to see where we are by the end of the year.
Welcome,
So-
everybody.
So this first goal, yeah, thank you, team. And this first goal that we'll be diving into is around reading. Our reading, we're monitoring it in a couple different ways. Back in November, we shared the projected proficiency scores in our MAP assessments. Tonight, we're sharing a different form of reading assessment, still utilizing the MAP, but this is measuring now the growth index, how students are growing towards proficiency. Not the projected proficiency, but this is their rate of growth. I think, Peter, you have the clicker? Oh, okay. I think we could move to the reading goal 1, the projected growth. Yeah, so we'll be walking through the elementary and the middle and high and sharing where we are and how we're responding to this data to continue to move us forward. So we come back and report at the end of the year.
All right. Thank you for having us here. I'm Peter McDougall, the assistant principal at Lincoln Elementary. And this first slide with data on it for us shows the percentage of students who are projected, who are making projected growth. So there's an aggressive growth goal that's been set by our district to be able to help students close the achievement gap. And this goal represents the percentage of students who are meeting that aggressive goal. There's also a percentage of students that are making a year's worth of growth, but this is that aggressive goal of the growth rate. So elementary has 32% of their students, or our students that are meeting that, and you can see the other percentages there. Middle 31 and high school
I have a quick
47.
question. So is this based on the latest MAPS results?
Yeah,
That's 32%.
this is a
showed growth?
comparison of the fall map data to the winter.
And this is, as Peter's describing, this is the that aggressive growth rate, the closing the gap growth rate that we identified, the conditional growth index of 0.5 utilizing the MAP assessment. So this is an accelerated rate of growth.
So I'm here to talk about the reading one, or I'm sorry, the elementary one for reading. And my colleagues here will talk about the middle and high school. So we're building on our reading program, which consists of a 90-minute literacy block, which incorporates reading, writing, and a number of different components, plus the 30 minutes of intervention and 30 minutes of ELD instruction, not to mention social studies, science. But so we have quite a bit of time that is literacy instruction. How we're responding to the data, though, to try to make sure we're growing that 32% to become even more students that are making that growth target, and also making sure these students continue, is we've been really focusing on a 30-minute unit of time that focuses on foundational skills and foundational skill instruction. And we have the representative from the ODE working with us named Beth, who has been providing PD actually for all of our schools on these Mondays, about 2 hours each Monday on foundational skills, how to do it, modeling it, everything from phonemic awareness to dictado to there's 6 different components of that part of the lesson plan, and it's pretty structured, and students are able to make progress with specific word work that helps them make progress. So we've been focusing on that 30 minutes of the 6-step lesson plan. And then the one right above it is the 30 minutes of small group instruction, making sure each of our students participates in small group instruction with their teacher, and then also some with EAs as well. And then making sure we have ways that every student has small group time with their teacher, and then the students that need it most have additional time with that equity lens. So they might meet with the teacher more than once or twice a week, maybe every day. So, but that 30 minutes of small group instruction is an important component. And then with that, to make sure that that's happening with fidelity, we are work on providing feedback by going in and observing, monitoring, and one of the things I know we did at Lincoln was we worked with teachers to help facilitate a way for them to generate what they think small group instruction would look like at its best. And our teachers came up with the ways that should look and what should be in place. And we, Teresa, was primary behind this, of putting that list together and then providing that back to teachers so that teachers would know what they collectively produced. And then we go in and provide some feedback for them on that. So that ends up becoming something that there's a reciprocal process where they're involved and also they get feedback on that. And then in addition, we've really started up recently a core review process. I think it's something that has been in place in the past, but this year we've really taken that on at the elementary level a little bit more so than last year. And I wasn't at the elementary level before last year. So, but that core review process has a number of steps to it. It through that process, our teachers examine the data. They determine what's working, what our next steps are that we really need to focus on. And so it's a good way to do an overview of the data so that we can really focus in on improving instruction on any lagging skills that the data shows. And that's done by grade level. So grade level teams meet and the administrators and other reading specialists and so forth are part of helping facilitate that. I mentioned the observation and feedback process articulated in the instructional model. And then all of that together also helps us to inform our PD, our professional development that we provide, which, the science of reading person that I mentioned, Beth, would be aware of our strengths and growth areas that we need to work on as, our directors of curriculum instruction would work with her to help us know, or help her to know what would be the priorities, and then also our building level PD, so that we are helping our teachers get the PD that's tailored to what they need to really help students move forward. And as a result of that, we were able to have 32% of our students meet that growth target, which is that aggressive target. And then we also have a percentage of students that are making a year's worth of growth. Nevertheless, it's also something that we are continuing to refine and work on improving, because we want to have a higher percentage be making that growth target. And just we got work to do to continue closing that achievement gap. The trend, though, is heading in a direction that the data shows that we can be proud of our progress recently.
And all of the elementary schools are doing this exactly?
Yeah, we are. And some schools in some ways might be in slightly different stages, or taking the lead in certain ways. And then we have ways of sharing ideas with each other. So, and learn from, like, if there's a school that's getting really strong results in a certain way, then we want to find out from each other what it is that we're doing. I know that Lincoln, I believe we have some Lincoln third grade teachers that are going to be going over to Nellie Muir soon, for example, to observe a teacher there. And then people might find out, well, what's happening at Lincoln that's causing these really strong results. So we do a lot, increasing ways to help each other grow. And then there's a lot of idea sharing when it comes to that. And then there's a lot of PD that that we work together on developing. I mean, part of that central work of the science of reading and that instruction, because it all comes together. Washington and Lincoln engaged in that a little bit more deeply last year, and now Heritage and Nellie Muir are doing that this year, just because the science of reading person was, well, I believe it had to do a little bit with that availability. So there's a little bit of who's doing one thing ahead of another, but it all works together, and we're all heading in that direction to make that progress.
Thank you.
Can you help me understand the 32%? That's not out of 100%, because not 100% of the kids needed this aggressive growth target, because imagine some kids are already meeting that target. Is that my understanding that correctly? Help me understand that. Is it 32 out of 100? So only 30, like, so 100% of these, of a group needed to meet this aggressive growth? Is that how I'm and only 32% of the 100% met that? Is that how I'm understanding that?
Well, sort of.
Yeah, help me out here.
So we have, I think it is around 9% of our students in third grade were at grade level for reading last year.
Okay.
And the goal that we've set is to make sure that have 19% of our students meet that reading goal this year. And so what that percentage is, it's the percentage of students that are making that aggressive growth goal. It's not the percent of students that are necessarily now meeting.
Right. So of the kids that needed to meet that goal, only the 32% is actually meeting that aggressive, that target. Is how I'm understanding that?
Good evening. Hello, thank you for having us.
Hi.
So the goal is set for students who are on so there are 5 different quintiles on the assessment. So the top 3 quintiles are like students who are average, above average. I can't think of the 5th one, but anyhow, the top 3 quintiles are students who are basically essentially on grade level. And so those students have a growth index of 0 or higher. So if they're at 0, they're continuing to make the same growth as other students who are at that same level. So they're basically just maintaining their learning. If it's above 0, then they're having positive growth. So they're more accelerated. So the students in the bottom 2 quintiles who are below grade level, their goal is to have the 0.5 or higher. And so the 32% represents students who were, if their goal was to be above 0, those students who met that goal, and then students who had the goal of being above 0.5. So it's the combination of both of those groups of students that met they all have like accelerated growth, even if they're on grade level.
I see. Okay.
So there could be a lot of students who got, who were just below 0. So they maybe lost a little bit, but they could still be on grade level. So this just represents students who had a positive growth. So they like gained on other peers who scored at that same level as them.
Yep, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay.
Let me clarify. So, sorry. So this is not just targeted below, like you could be a
Correct.
high student making extra growth.
Correct.
Okay,
And we still want students who are high to continue to
Sure.
make at least, steady growth.
Right.
Because we don't want them to then fall behind.
Right.
And so we monitor both
Right.
students who are at and above and students who are below.
is there a way at some point or somewhere in the data to kind of section out the kids who are below, most at risk, to see what percentage of those kids are making the gains that we would want?
Yes. I mean, that is possible to, I
That
don't
would
have
be
it with me
helpful.
tonight, but yes. that is
Because
possible.
those are the kids at most at risk.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Does the middle school colleague want to go?
So, oh. Okay. So, looking at the data for us, can you go to the next slide? So for middle school, the way we're responding to the data is that we're looking at some different interventions for our kiddos because of the way our schedules are. Students are scheduled in certain classes throughout the day. So we do have some after-school reading interventions for some of our kiddos. and that's on a volunteer basis. We do have teachers that are doing before hours. So on certain days of the week, we have meetings scheduled. And the teachers that are not scheduled to be at those meetings for those committee meetings have office hours for our kids. So if those kiddos want to drop by, they can drop by and see their teacher. Specifically in all of our classrooms, tier 1, so for all of our kids, that intervention is focusing on academic vocabulary, specifically to the classes that are being taught. So like in the science class versus a math class or social studies class and so on and so forth. Then next we are looking at our leadership team, our leadership, so that'd be the administrative teams would be doing walkthroughs throughout the buildings. And then we also have PD for our teachers, and then we're also doing PD for all of our staff. So on those PD Mondays, we're trying to get our assistants to work together with our with each other to work on interventions and reading for all of our kiddos. Have anything to add?
So for us, the after-school reading interventions is something new. We just started doing our assessment for students. So it's about to start based on the MAPS results from last year, because we're not using MAPS this year at Valor. We selected specific students to do another assessment, and that's the way that French Prairie did it. It's just a little bit different. Our schools are after-school reading interventions, so we are selecting students based on those assessments. And then after that, we're going to be calling parents and letting them know that they have been selected due to the results of the assessments that we're doing. Basically, 2 data points. We're using MAPS, and then we're using also the other assessment. And then we're going to put them in this intervention plan for 6 weeks. And then we're going to see what the results are based on that. But we are targeting students, and it will be after school. It's going to be 3 days a week for us. I know that my understanding is French Prairie is doing advisory.
Yeah, so during our advisory class, specifically our 7th grade team took the data from Map Growth and also did a few other assessments. And during advisory class, so we have advisory every day for 30 minutes every day, 3 days a week. They will be doing we have some of our kids in different intervention groups. So they'll be doing, one group's going to be doing what's called U-Fly. Actually, there'll be 2 groups or 3 groups that'll be doing U-Fly, and then the other groups will be doing some other I believe one of them is called, no, not I believe, it's called Rewards, is another program that we're doing with some of our kids that are not. So we looked at the kids and then said, okay, these are kiddos that are really, that are struggling phonemically. They can't see words and spell them out and sound them out. So that's in our U-Fly group, and then the Rewards group. These kids can have some phonemic awareness, but they still need some help, some extra help. So our 7th grade team is piloting that, and then we're also looking at specific interventions with some kids that are brought to our SIT team, which is a group that meets every Monday that looks at like kids that are being brought to the team by teachers. Like, hey, we're noticing this kiddo is really struggling in reading, so we're working on placing them also in some intervention groups as well.
So then, are your advisories? So for example, in one advisory, is it all the U-Fly? Are they separated that way? How?
Yes, for this semester, we took a group of students, and we spoke to the parents and said we're gonna work specifically. So one teacher is working with this group of about, I think it was 15 kids, where they're working specifically with this group on U-Fly throughout the 3 days a week. So I think they're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. No, excuse me. They're doing it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because Mondays and Fridays, we always end up with, if there's going to be a holiday or something, it's going to be on those days. So we really want to focus on that, getting the intervention, because we know the intervention does work because it's been piloted. Actually, last year, we piloted with some of our kids, and we saw some amazing growth. And this is why our teachers said, hey, you know what, I want to be part of that. So that's why we're using that with the 7th grade group.
And so this is only 15 students you're administering this?
For U-Fly, and then the other group is about 30 students that are doing the Rewards group. So we couldn't get everybody. So, and then the rest of the students in the 7th grade are doing, because most of them are, for the most part, I mean, they're not like on grade level, because the UFly is really looking at kids that are like below third grade reading level. And so the other kids that are third grade and above, they're in their advisory teachers class working on Dreambox, which does help kids from third grade and above. So the students that really need the help, those 35 kids, 45 kids are getting that really extra help in the advisory class.
Is this the first year you're doing the U-Fly?
Like I said, we piloted it last year with a few students, but this is the first time we're doing it with a
A full group?
a whole grade, yeah. And we're hoping to continue on to see how it goes this year and then getting more pockets of excellence. And then we're going to start sharing it out, hey, we're going to now we're going to take this to the 8th grade team and then, and then work its way down and up.
It would be great to see the results at the end of the year versus how they've improved.
Yeah, so we literally just started this, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we'll have some data in about 3 or 4 weeks. So probably right before break, we'll have some data to see how much growth the kids that are getting that intensive support in that class.
And so Dreambox is a reading program?
Yes, it's a reading program.
So everybody's reading in advisory?
Yeah.
We're getting some sort of help?
Yep. So the UFly group, they're getting help through the UFly, which is because when the kids that are doing the UFly group, it's below what Dreambox can help them with because it's below third grade level, because it's all about, do I know my letter sounds? Do I know CVC sounds? Then those kind of basic foundational reading skills that Dreambox really can't help with. Dreambox, reading, when you read more, you become a better reader. And so if you can read and you have that phonemic awareness, it's easier for you to gain more confidence. But if you don't have those foundational skills, you don't want to read. So that's why we're really focusing on those kids that are really so far below that need that intensive support.
And my last comment, in seeing results, I'm just curious how effective this is with tardiness. Because I'm assuming kids are late. So if they're late, they're not getting the full 30 minutes of reading. So I'm just wondering if that's something that you're going to look at.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, as a attendance team, that's one thing that we're looking at and going to steal an idea from Valor. Thank you, Ms. Hanson. We're going to come up with it. We're going to work on an incentive program to get kids to school on time. Basically, if their class has 20 or less tardies for the whole day, they have a little extra time during lunchtime. So trying to have the kids encourage their friends to get to class on time. Yeah, because we noticed that coming to school at 8:15, getting there at 8:20, sometimes consistently we have kids getting dropped off even by their parents by 8:25, 8:30. So those 5 minutes can make a difference. 5-10 minutes can make a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like, for instance, this group of children or students, excuse me, that are consistently late, and I'm sure the parents are having there could be many aspects of the reason why they're always tardy. But is there any incentives as to having teenagers, older teenagers, and we've all been teenagers and we've all battled with our parents and getting on sleep on time, but like incentives as to like for them to have a proper sleep schedule versus then be up on time. Because again, being a parent and all of us being teenagers at one time, it's just this, many times students, especially middle schoolers and high schoolers, they always have that reward if they improve, areas of improvement to strive towards. So I don't know if you guys if there's little reward programs as such.
Yes, so
struggle.
when we get to the attendance portion, we do have like individual attendance contracts. If you're reaching that tier 3 kid, right, that kiddo that we just, you have your tier 1 where we're getting everybody, tier 2, which is groups of kids, and then you have your tier 3, which are specific kids. But yeah, we do work with families on attendance contracts and making phone calls, making those connections with families to brainstorm how to best get that particular kiddo to school. But like I said, we can talk about that a little bit more when we get to the attendance portion.
Right.
I just had one question, Art. Of the kids that are really low, is there a difference in the bilingual program versus, because once you're in middle school, you really need that content. We're not just teaching the language anymore, we're teaching content in that language, which really can put a distance, right? So I'm just curious, again, the kind of the breakdown of our kids who are struggling the most. As
So
far
I
as-
don't have that data off the top of my head.
Sure.
But I would imagine, there, probably a good majority of those students are in dual language programs.
Okay.
Um,
And we know there is a delay in language and acquiring two languages,
Mhm.
right? And anyway, just that catch up, isn't, by fifth grade, we would
Yeah,
hope
but-
they've caught up in the normal and then,
we're also noticing that kids were not only struggling in the English language arts classes, but also in their Spanish classes.
right,
So the Spanish, because students that are in the dual language program do have a Spanish language arts class
right.
in addition to a language arts. So we were noticing that there was a struggle between, it was both languages. So it
Yeah.
wasn't just a developmental delay
In the
based upon my language acquisition, but based upon like, I struggle when it comes to reading. I don't understand how to
Got
put
it.
those,
They're actually more the
the,
dysfunction within the
yeah,
reading function.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dulce Nash, and I'm the principal at Woodburn High School, and I have here Mr. Sin with me. What? So at the high school, as far as reading, we have been reflecting about, what to do when we have a high percentage of students needing support. And so we agree that we cannot intervene our way out of a problem that is that big. So especially, as you mentioned, we have to focus heavily on content, taking into account that our language arts classes are integrated classes. So what we decided to do is focusing heavily on the core as far as how are we going to reinforce that. And we're doing that, training our teachers to constructing meaning. So our language arts and social studies teachers have been engaged in full day trainings as far as how to support students to access content, scaffold, bridge, and everything that is needed in order for students to be successful. At Success High School, we have the Read 180 program, and it's basically a program that is just reading strategies. It is organized mostly by whole group instruction and then small group instruction. And so students are benefiting from that program there. So in addition to that, looking at our numbers, we have developed some interventions as far as like populations. We have our migrant interventions happening Tuesdays and Thursdays after school. We have some newcomers who are getting specific instruction as well. We have Saturday school tutoring. And so those are some of the things that we're doing, but we know that we really, really need to start in the classroom. So we have some data here to share with you. Mr. Sin is going to share it.
Yeah, thank you. So we do feel like there's, we're experiencing a decent effect size here from what we're implementing. We've got 47.9% meeting that rigorous growth goal of 0.5. And this is students in that low to low average achievement quintiles from our fall 2024 data set. And I will mention this is ninth grade data. So we're specifically looking at ninth graders here. And we can actually see that they had an average growth index of 1.37. According to MAPS, who produces this assessment, an average growth index of 1 is actually quite high. So this is a really high average growth index score. We had 31.25% of students move up one full achievement quintile, which is excellent as well. And actually 54.9% had high to high average levels of growth. So, you're looking over to the right side there, while students increased, 29.6 to 35.6% of students that are reading that level, we did see a very significant growth on that. So, we acknowledge we've got room to grow to get more students at grade level, but the growth we're seeing is pretty substantial. So yeah, the total average growth index score, if you look at all students, not just those in the lower quintiles, was 0.31. But for those students that were in those two lower quintiles, that average growth index score of 1.37 is pretty significant.
So I'm just kind of curious when it's just ninth graders. I mean, I don't know how many ninth graders you have, but how many ninth graders is this?
42.
142?
342.
Oh, 342 freshmen. And how many of them meet that growth? 47 point, oh, okay, thank you.
That's really significant.
Thank you, team. You see that focus on the core and working with teams to build that collective efficacy for teachers to be able to take on making decisions for their kids. So kudos there. Our next data set that we're looking at is the cell growth goal that we've been measuring with our DESA assessment. And this is looking at the students who are in that needs of improvement category. And we'll be looking at the progress being made. And again, the DESA measures the different 8 domains of social emotional wellness of students. When we presented this data, when we presented this data back in the fall, 26% of students as a district were identified as in need of instruction. After the winter, it's down to 15%. So we see fewer students who are in that needs of instruction category, and we'll take some time now to walk through and what does that look like by level, and thinking about okay, we've seen some great growth here with the decrease of new students who are in need of instruction. What's contributed to that? What are we continuing to maintain? What can we adjust to continue to have fewer and fewer kids in that need of instruction area?
Okay, so at the elementary level, you can see there in the fall when we did the DESA, there were 9% of students that were in the need of instruction category, and then our winter data, which we did recently, it was 6% of the students who were in that category. So that's an improvement there, and by quite a bit. If you go from 9 to 6%, even though 9 is kind of low to start with, we're definitely making that progress, hitting that 3% target. And then, so students moved, well, a third of the students moved from need of instruction to typical. And then we also, you can see the typical moved into strength. We have students that moved into that because the strength category grew from 25% of the students up to 31% of the students.
I'm sorry, can you help me understand in need of instruction of what? Being more self-aware, I mean, how to be, how to build relationships, how to make better decisions? Is that what that's referring to? Okay.
Yeah, it's referring to those competencies. And
Thank
so,
you.
yeah.
I just wasn't.
And I think as you hear some of the ways that we're responding to the data, that'll give you an idea of how we're approaching it, which will probably help understand what students need. And then, but those are the categories, those eight categories there. So at the elementary level, I mean, we focus on many things. This is our bullet list of how we've been focusing on improving that category. And so throughout the year, we've been really focusing on promoting a sense of belonging in our students and really helping them feel like they belong at their school, in their classroom, feeling that sense of importance, and really making sure we have a really strong, warm school culture for our students, and that they really feel that and sense that. And so, and then we also have small group intervention with counselors for students that are really that are in that need category. They'll meet with students in small groups, and they obviously can't meet with everybody in a small group, but they can meet with the students who need it most. Our counselors do go in and provide guidance lessons in every class once a month, but to actually meet in small groups, that would be a smaller number. And so we target the ones that are most in need there. We have school-wide Tier 1 strategies that help students develop a stronger sense of self-management. So I can't speak for all the schools, but it's probably similar. At Lincoln, we focus on helping students, like, we do daily affirmations to help them say the words that they're important, they're loved, they're intelligent. You know, as you say these things, you work on moving toward believing them. And so we do that in English. It happens in Spanish. It happens once a week as a whole school over the intercom, and then it also happens in classes more often than that. So, and then also another example is the calming corners that we've created, so students can become aware of how they're feeling and when they might need a little break, and be able to have methods, strategies, be able to make progress with that. So just a couple of examples of ways we might help students with self-management. And then we have SEL, social emotional learning instruction, based on the Harmony curriculum, and there's standards there that that focuses on, and every morning, the first 30 minutes is SEL instruction focused in our classes. We also have a social worker that all 4 elementary schools share, and he spends 1 day a week at each school and meets with students that are most in need. And that's a really small number, but students who have the really high needs, and he's able to help them. And that's in addition to our counselors working with students. And then our behavior specialists too. We have a couple of behavior specialists that serve the elementary schools. So we have, they would focus more on the tier 2 and tier 3 students, that need more support as well than like our 80% that don't really need the additional support. And there's some variation by schools, and so we as schools, we share strategies, like I mentioned with the reading, and what's working and what we need to improve. So, but that's kind of a big picture look at the elementary.
So that collaboration, coordination amongst all the elementary schools, how does that take place? Is that during some of those PD days, or is that just, you know, over a beer after work? Or I mean, how does that work? Is that organized time where all the principals are getting together and talking about, hey, how are we going to respond to this data? How is that organized? How is that collaborated amongst all the elementary schools, so it's a coordinated response? Or is it more
with that is more every Tuesday our administrative team meets together, and that would be one of the topics that we might talk about, because we're really focused on these specific goals that we're talking about this evening. And so recently we looked at the data displays in different, those 8 different categories, and looked at I mean, what I recall is looking at the different schools' data and noticing strengths at one school or another, and then trying to learn from each other what it is, because we don't always know. We're trying to, it doesn't always exactly correlate to know with, oh, this strategy is exactly producing this, but what we can see are strong results in certain areas. Like Lincoln, that self-management was an area that was a primary focus of ours, and the data showed an improvement in that area. But we would, so during some of those Tuesday meetings, we would meet together and talk about that. But that's at the administrative level.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, just like our teachers are working as PLCs and looking at their data and making decisions. We're working to develop that as an administrative team. So at those Tuesday afternoon times, there's time dedicated to, like, let's look at our data together and walk through data protocols and look for those places and like develop our PLC structure with each other as building leaders.
So you mentioned your social workers, one for 4 elementary schools. So doesn't that seem kind of scarce? Because wouldn't one elementary school be more demanding of his schedule versus the other 3? Because, one elementary, like you say, Lincoln has a self-improvement area, and then, but what about, I don't know, Heritage might have a greater need, or Nellamere might have a greater need because they have a little bit more of students that have that struggling of of belonging or of self-awareness, self-management, just avenues of improvement in the student structure.
I don't know if that's my question to answer, but we always,
Oh.
we'd love to have more time with the social worker. I know we have a lot of competing interests with budget
Right.
and priorities. We could always, we have space for the social worker to be in our school more. But those are big decisions in terms of how we're,
So how do you coordinate and manage their time? Just like Lincoln has them Monday and Tuesday versus Washington has them available for Wednesday, Friday, or?
They
for
go to each
social
school
worker, yeah.
one school a week. Sorry.
One day a week.
Yes.
Sorry, I missed that.
But we do have full-time counselors at our
Right.
schools that are there all the time.
In addition to the behavior specialist.
So we have half a behavior specialist, or a behavior specialist that splits 2 schools.
Would that be elementary and middle school? Or
No,
is that elementary only?
we have one that is at Washington and Lincoln.
Oh, okay.
The middle school has one social worker that does both schools. But if you go back a few years, we didn't necessarily have a social worker.
Mhm.
So it's been a response to a need that while it'd be great to have more, we're happy to have a social worker in our building because it offers something that's a little bit different than what a counselor is able to offer. They both have lots of strengths. There's certain students that really benefit from that social worker.
And so is it therapy that they're providing? What exactly? How is that different from like a behavior specialist? I guess that could be for anyone.
Yeah, the behavior
I don't
specialist.
think I don't know I'm not here with the deep knowledge of a social worker, so maybe I'll.
Thank you.
The intent of the behavior specialist is a more proactive person. They are monitoring, doing, functional behavior analysis of students when there's a behavior, developing behavior plans, supporting them in the classroom with the instruction, doing even perhaps some coaching of behavior support for teachers. When the social worker is doing the, direct support to students. Doing some really direct, intense work with students around specific needs that are identified through the DESA.
But they don't do, my question is, do they provide therapy?
The level of
Like,
if it's
when you say
clinical,
support, what is that? Is that social support? Is that?
it's really differentiated what the need of the student is and what they're being referred to see a social worker for.
Thank you.
I guess it's my turn. Okay. So middle school, how are we responding to the data? So based on that, we, last time I talked about creating groups, we have created some groups. We have made some growth. As you all know, middle school is very unique. Every day is something new. And so we try our best to really meet that need of the students. I think we do have those groups going on with our counselors and our social worker. We actually at Valor just hired our behavior specialist. So she's also going to start running groups. We have actually a meeting scheduled on Friday to see based on the need of DESA, what groups are needed. We have found out that obviously, as you may know, our students at the middle school need self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship skills, decision-making, goal-directed behavior, optimistic thinking, and personal responsibility. So we definitely need to create a group for each of those competencies just because the need is so different. And a lot of the times, what we have found out is that they think about themselves so negatively, and it's so hard for us to get them out of that cycle. And so just having those conversations even has, just creating different clubs and different things has been helping a lot in creating that sense of belonging at the middle schools has been so helpful. So just making sure that they're aware that we see them, that we know they're there, that we are caring about them, and that we're gonna support them. I think some of the steps that we have taken that maybe we haven't really included in the past is we respond to bullying situations. Nothing that comes to the office is too small. And so we try to really be proactive in like, okay, you're having an issue with your best friend, how are you gonna resolve that? Just this past week, for example, I had a family, two families, they live next to each other. The kids have been fighting a lot. They actually got into a physical altercation outside the school and then in school. So the parents wanted to meet with them because they want to maintain that relationship. And we ended up talking about how when they were 4, they will go to each other's house to get eggs to make pancakes, and then the other will bring in pancakes. And so it's just those important things that we have to do on a day-to-day. And so we do invest the time in really bringing a team together just to have those restorative moments. We address behavior concerns. Even when we assign consequences, we are actually making it a learning opportunity for the students and teaching them all those skills and letting them know the importance of all of that. We are doing mediations. We're doing so many other things. I think that it's like every time I walk outside the office, something is happening. So we try to address them, rumors about anything and everything. We actually jump on those and make sure we do have amazing counselors who are always willing to support for that specific mediation. At least at Valor, we had the counselors. And even when we do discipline, we involve the counselors because I think it's always good to have someone who is advocating for the students and to have them there just to really support the students. And they feel so supported to know that someone is there, right? And we are supporting them and they know that we want what's best for them. And so a lot of the times they will advocate like, can I just get ISS, which is in school suspension? I'm like, let's talk about what happened and why the consequence and why are we doing this? And we know that the solution a lot of the times is not the suspension. Sometimes we have to do it, right? It is that part of accountability and letting them know, either action, whenever you do something, it's going to have a consequence, whether that is positive or negative, right? It's really important for us to teach them those things. So I think we're responding to the data by not only providing the support, but also having that accountability piece with the students and teaching them, because at the end of the day, they're going to go out into the world and we want to make sure that they know there will be consequences and this is going to happen. So, and this is why those moments are so important.
And kind of ditto what's going on at French Prairie as well. Another thing that that we're doing a little bit differently because of our schedule, the way it works out, is with our daily advisory. And we begin the day in advisory 30 minutes, and then we end the day in the last 9 minutes with advisory. We do reason why we have the end of the day is so we have a Chromebook check in, check out. So kids, like this is their Chromebook, right? And so it's got their name on it. They're responsible for it. But at the end of the day, like I had a teacher email me today, say, hey, you know what, my kids told me there might be something brewing here. Can you come down to the hallway and just check, just kind of be a presence. So kids are really connecting with their teachers and having that opportunity to really just find that teacher because, again, they start the day with them, they end the day with them, and they usually have them for most of the kids. That advisory teacher, they have them for at least one class. Typically, it's their first period class because the advisory is typically it's based upon your first period class. There's some kids that have a different advisor. But for the most part, those kids will spend, an hour and a half, almost 2 hours a day with this teacher. And so just building that rapport and that relationship, which is it's so important. I mean, and that's something that Superintendent Larios has been emphasizing with us as a leadership team this entire year is we want to create a sense of belonging. We want kids to want to be at school. So those are just things that we're working on and just continue not only in advisory, but all of our classes, right? Like trying to create that sense of belonging.
Is anything being done at the peer-to-peer level, student to student? Are you identifying student leaders and empowering them to be a voice, to be a leader among their peers? Turn that off. Just the other day, the last time I was here, we met some incredible kids who were identified by your staff to come up here and receive awards. And you think those should be the ones in your student body really making the difference amongst their own peers. And so I'm just wondering, what are you doing to empower them to be leaders amongst their peers.
So I know both schools, we have leadership classes.
Yeah, we do have leadership classes. We also have, we have a leadership club. It's with 8th graders. I think 2 of my kids got recognized last time, and they are part of the leadership club. We call them over during lunch. We have also students who actually are in the leadership class who, you know, will come and show our new students around. Like, they will welcome them and show them, you know, what it is. So we partner, like, we pair them up with someone else who we believe, you know, can be a good influence too. And so we show them around. So I think we are trying to really incorporate that student voice when it comes to, like, hey, like, some of the ideas that we have incorporated for tardies is like, okay, well, if we're not late, Miss Hanson, can we use our phones? That came from that leadership club specifically. It's a lot of like them like asking for, this is what we really want with those Raptor tickets. We don't care about the pen. So we want to make sure that we are incorporating and listening to them. I think this is the first year that I can say that we are trying to push this forward. So we are working. It's always a work in progress. I think, you know, I was surprised in all honesty that the students wanted to stay on a Friday afternoon with me because I am the principal at the end of the day. They love staying, and they just, last time I had to cancel it, and they were so sad. And I was like, don't make me feel bad. Like, I have to go, I have to a doctor's appointment. But it's just really about like them and hearing them out. I think it has been such a great way to really recognize the student leaders. It was a volunteer process too. So it was really nice to see so many kids volunteer. I do have about 28 students who are part of that leadership club who stay after school every Friday, which I think is great. It was an opportunity just given to the 8th graders. I don't know how it will work out if I had 7 and 8, 7 and 6 too. So it's a lot, but I do feel that it is really important for them to know that we are hearing them and listening to them. I do have 2 leadership classes as well, 7 and 8. We do not have any 6th grader for 6th graders because we do have the wheel for them, and that's what they do for electives. I know you do have 7 and 8 as well for leadership.
Yeah, we have a leadership class. And we also, I know Principal Brandau brought in some kids last couple weeks where they were part of this. It was super secret, but not super secret. They were brought in, and they were nominated by the teachers to be a student voice. So they're part of our student voice committee. So just really trying to empower these young people, because the reality of it is there's 600 of them and there's 55 of us, right? So the reality is the way the kids can really make an impact in the whole school culture of the school, just by their sheer presence. And so our job is to help facilitate that leadership and encourage them to be the most amazing young people they can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree with the statement Mrs. Hanson just made as far as that every interaction with the student is a teaching opportunity, but I would add that it's also a learning opportunity. And so for us, it's to learn, like, what are the students struggling with? What are the areas that we're actually neglecting? So TESA gives us a lot of that data, and because sometimes we have a different perception, right? We might see students who we interpret it as they're doing great, and then they self-rate in complete different ways. And so the data that we're using is to create lessons to be delivered during advisory, and those are based on students' self-ratings and those competencies. Then we also have some care and connection activities that are built into those lessons, and what the things that we have found out is that social awareness skills are still rated as the highest need. So we have some recent data, and we have Respect Week coming up pretty soon, March 3rd to the 7th. So Ms. Sasaki is going to share some updated data here.
I'm sorry, before we move on, can you help me understand what the red, green, and blue stand for here?
Yeah, I will
thank
do
you.
that, yeah. So again, this is the student self-ratings, and so this is overall, it's the whole group of students that have completed the assessment. So if they're in the red, they're saying that that's an area of need. So for example, the composite score is, of all of those 8 areas combined, 50% of students that rated themselves as that being an area of need. The blue is that they're considered typical, like a typical student would be about in this range. Again, they're self-rating. And then the green is a student saying, I see this as a strength that I have, right? So, so to address our data, again, like what Ms. Nash was saying, is that we have social awareness continues to be the area that students are rating as their highest level of need. So that's what we're focusing on in our delivery, our instruction of SEL and advisory. So we do have an advisory committee that meets monthly to review data, to ensure that our advisory lessons are timely and responsive. And so when we're looking at DESA, this team looked at increasing care and connection activities and also teaching teachers how to deliver the lessons in a more interactive and engaging way. So they are looking at like, how do we increase engagement in these content lessons on social emotional learning in the area of like social awareness, for example. So we, again, like what Steph was saying, is we have Respect Week coming up, which is our partnership with Special Olympics and Unified Sports to increase awareness and build skills and taking perspective, kind of just in line with that same idea that social awareness is the area that students are rating that they have the highest need in, is just trying to find those ways to encourage students taking perspective, encourage them to understand other points of view. And we've also seen like lessons in the actual classroom level where teachers are building that into their instruction, like around how do we think the character is feeling? How do they respond in their, in response to how they were feeling in the moment? Do you agree with how they handled the situation? And just bringing in that self component into like students' reflections on what they're reading, what they're processing. So, oops, sorry. So that's this first slide, and then the next page. So this chart represents what some of the other work that we're doing with ESSA. This is more at the individual level. So when we identify students at the grade level MTSS team, this is something we're trying to build capacity to doing better. But we're utilizing the student level report when looking at the whole student, what supports might be needed or helpful for them. And again, this can include things like a teacher team making an intentional effort to connect with the student, referring a student to the counselor, moving towards having counselor-run groups. And then again, we also have behavior specialists who run a calming center, and they work with students based on the same areas of need. And so this chart here is just an example of what the individual report looks like. And then you see for the area of personal responsibility, they said that the teacher rated the student as having difficulty encouraging positive behaviors in others and preparing for school activities or coming events and getting things done in a timely fashion. So the teacher team for MTSS, when they were talking about the specific student, were looking at ways to be intentional about their check-ins with the student during the period that they have them. So again, those are just kind of like ways that we're trying to be more intentional about using the data and that we have, and looking for signs that students are gaining those skills and feeling more confident in those skills.
I have a question.
So I think it's similar to what the middle school has, is when there's a new student, then they take them to their classes, they have lunch with them, they make sure that they are available. Yeah, exactly. As they're starting school. And then just also on here, like I said, what Ms. Dash was saying is we have constructing meaning training. And again, that's really the goal in that, is to increase student talk, or like in like structured student talk, so they're talking with each other more. Again, we have teachers who are making a point of like, when students are engaging in structured talk, they're saying, hey, you're going to introduce yourself to your partner, whether you know them or not. You're going to say, hi, I'm John, I'm Carlos, and then we're going to like have an actual like modeled conversation back and forth to increase students' confidence with those types of interactions.
How are we doing on phones in the classroom? Because that's, in my experience in being in the classroom, it's probably the #1 barrier to actual conversation.
Yeah, so we have a cell phone policy that the only time students are able to have their phones is before and after, before school and during lunches. During the school day, during classes, they're expected to be put away. Um,
And how is that going? Is
So-
that well enforced? Is that, because
Yeah.
that hasn't been my experience.
Um,
For the most part, it's been enforced.
Okay.
There's sometimes that we will get some communication from teachers saying like, can I be, excused from following the policy because I need it as a resource. We haven't had many incidents as far as like students being completely defiant.
Okay.
I mean, we had some, but not in a percentage that we can say.
It's getting
certain.
better.
No, absolutely, it's getting better. When we implemented the policy, we thought we were going to get a lot of pushback. And I think we got more pushback from parents than from students. The idea was part of being able to contact the student in case of an emergency and things like that. So it took some training, communication also for parents, making sure that they know how to communicate with the school. But the pushback from students wasn't
Great.
that great, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, team, for highlighting the outstanding work being done to continue to improve our student social emotional competencies. So we are on track to meet that goal. This next goal that we're looking at has to do with our school culture and climate. We utilize the Youth Truth Survey to collect feedback. That's really a culture climate type survey from students and staff. Our goal in this area was to increase by 10% the culture in our schools. So overall, we got our feedback back, and we did meet that 10% growth. We are at 36% right now of our students and staff reporting positive school culture. If you take a look at what is typical for other schools in our region, through the Willamette ESD, they saw a 4% growth. So we did make closing the gap growth and improving our school culture this year. A state of Oregon, we saw a 1% growth, and we saw 12% growth in improvement of our school culture. So kudos to this work as we continue the aspects. This isn't a standalone thing. It's connected to all the other work and all of the goals and how people are working together to improve conditions in our building. So we'll have an opportunity to now hear a little bit about what's been done to reach these growth goals, and to what our next steps are to continue to improve our school culture.
So the data at the elementary level is there on display. If you go back to 3 years ago, 22, 23, 19% of students reported a positive school culture. Last year, it went up to 21% of students, and this year it's 27% of students are reporting a positive school culture. And that's based on the measure of the Youth Truth Survey questions. You can see the comparisons there to typical schools in the Willamette ESD as well as in Oregon, whereas the Woodburn Elementary School started 2 years ago. They're behind all those other two categories. Now we've made some strong progress, and we've surpassed both the Willamette ESD typical school and the Oregon school. So we're making that strong growth there in that way. So 6% improvement from last year. Staff, keeping in mind that 10% growth is our goal. You can see back in 22, 23, 42% of staff reported positive culture. And there's a whole number of questions that staff and also that students are answering to determine their sense of positive culture. And it shows a 3.5 out of 5, at least a 3.5 or greater. So the 3 is like neutral, a 5 is strong, a 1 would be the opposite of strong. So really, really weak. And so we're to determine if it's positive, it'd be an average for that respondent on the survey to have at least a 3.5 average out of 5. And so you can see there with our staff, we were at 42% the last 2 years, 22, 23, 23, 24. And this year, we've made some strong progress there, up 9%, with the Youth Truth Survey data there. Aiming at 10% growth, nevertheless, we can celebrate the 9%. So, and as you can see from the typical Willamette and typical Oregon schools, we have room to grow to catch that, close the gap. We see that they're not necessarily making that growth that we are, but they also, it'd be nice to be sitting there at 67%.
I'm curious, I have a question. Is there opportunity to ask open-ended questions to maybe gather more information as to why? Okay.
Yeah, there's some reading skill questions, and then there are some open-ended questions where people could provide direct feedback and type in responses.
Do you know what contributed to this improvement? Or
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what this next slide
Great segue.
is, since you asked. And actually, some of the things that we've talked about previously really lend themselves to this improvement also. At all of our elementary schools, and I'm assuming at the middle and high as well, continuing to just have and further develop our PBIS program, that positive behavior program, social emotional learning instruction, as I mentioned earlier, guidance lessons that our counselors do in classrooms. We have different ways that our students are involved in community building and having a voice at the different levels. At the elementary level, we have assemblies monthly that are pretty exciting. They get to dance, they get to, we had fire chiefs come to our last one, and they talked to us a little bit, and we got to give them some blankets that we had, did a big blanket drive, so we get to do some exciting things. In addition to that, though, we recognize students who are really strong contributors to the community in terms of character, and then lots of students in terms of attendance that hit different targets for attendance. And we recognize, the class and the grade level that have the highest level of attendance. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the attendance. But assemblies and some of that spirit that we do, that celebration, we also have a smaller version of that once a week for our 3rd through 5th and K through 2. And I'm sure it's similar at the other elementaries. And then for staff, we've been collaborating with them to develop wellness teams that we call it the 4 C's, but it focuses on staff wellness and ways that staff could participate and just be a part of doing things that they might enjoy doing together. And we do that once a month. It incorporates things like social committee and so forth, but things to just help with that morale. In addition to, working hard also helps with that morale, because we're all in this, we signed up for this, and we're in this together to really make progress with our students. There's opportunities to collaborate and so forth. But all of that together, promoting that culture and wellness opportunities for staff, as well as that work ethic among our staff too. So recognizing and celebrating in different ways.
Could I just interrupt, or not interrupt, but add, I'm curious to know if we did a baseline happiness, if they come to us with higher, their baseline of life satisfaction. Because I'm wondering if those poor scores behind Oregon reflect to the stresses that our kids are experiencing outside before they even come to us. I would just be curious to know if that is contributing to that lower than average, because I'm wondering why our schools aren't any less friendly, or, I mean, we got a lot of belonging going on in Woodburn. It's kind of a unique feature of Woodburn. So I'm curious to know more about that, if we're working from trying to catch up before we even start.
I'll just answer with one example, because I think the survey may cause for wonder a little bit what kind of questions are asked. So one question of students is, has them answer whether they feel important or not. Mm-hmm. And so digging a little bit deeper, what does that mean to feel important? Mm-hmm. What does it mean for a student to feel important? If they do feel important, how would they know? What would be signs? Because important for a kindergartner or first grader is a pretty abstract concept. So we happen to have that as one of our affirmations is I am important. We also, though, work to make sure our students understand how they're important. And one of the ways that we have done that at Lincoln is focusing on thinking together about listening, how our staff listens to our students, and then tying that to that sense of importance, so that it moves from being an abstract concept where it might be, well, I'm famous, I am important, I am, actually, you can be important even if not everybody knows who you are. So, as we break that down, it can be, I don't know, there's just a lot to think about with it. And
So you're almost teaching the language to them
at least
of
in
this
that-
assessment.
At least that example
Yeah.
that I gave, that's just one example as you look at all of it, to
Right.
kind of think about what it's measuring and what our students are understanding and why they might rate things a certain way.
Right.
And then through some instruction, they might learn a little bit more. Another question is, do students behave in class? And if you go into our classrooms, there's really good behavior all around. But if a student in their mind thinks,
Right.
oh, well, there were a couple students that misbehaved at one point today, and they can remember that when they answer that question, then they might think that a student doesn't behave in class. But if you were to use measures of student behavior, we don't have many disruptions. We have positive support that students provide each other. And so it's just interesting to look at those measures. And
Right.
I mean, everything I shared there is kind of my take or my opinion, but it offers opportunities for us to kind of help our students think about what it is that they are, how they're responding to some of those questions.
Great. Thank you.
So looking at the middle school reporting of the positive culture, as you can see up there, last year we saw a pretty significant, from last year to this year, we saw a pretty significant increase of about 13%. And again, I think we can attribute that to some of the things we're doing when it comes to sense of belonging for students in the classrooms. And again, building those relationships with the students. Looking at the staff data, oops, clicking on my computer when I'm supposed to click on this. Look at the staff data. We actually saw a pretty large increase between last year and this year, from 31% to 51%. And again, it's how staff are feeling about the culture of our school building. And so, like Peter said, I mean, we've made some pretty significant growth. We're not there with the other schools just yet, but at the same time, we're seeing some tremendous growth, and we'll continue to work with our staff and try to see more growth as we continue throughout not only the remainder of the school year, but working into next school year as we work with all of our staff members. So how are we responding to this data? So looking at the data, so we continue to just have our kids, through that student leadership and that student voice committee that we talked about earlier, again, going over our PBIS expectations and just reviewing this. And then we're also reviewing the data with our staff at least quarterly, if not more often. We're reviewing with our PBIS team more often, but as a staff, we're doing it at least quarterly. And then continue just meeting with our leadership teams to get input about decisions for the school for the upcoming year, or what's happening for the remainder of the year. And when we do this, we want to see an increase in the number of kids getting to class on time. Again, we're stealing that idea from Valor, and Ms. Hanson was telling me what great results she was seeing from her kiddos. Hey, you get 2/3 of the kids. I mean, there you go. That's the group that, you can't get them all, but if we can get, a vast majority of them, that's a good thing. And then just continue to see that increase in the Youth Truth Survey. This year, we took it earlier than we did last year. Last year, we took it in March, and this year we took it in November, so a little bit earlier in the year. And then something that we noticed when we were looking at the data at our admin meetings was the staff sections about involvement in decision-making and consistent application of rules. We saw a pretty large increase. And the student sections about fair and respectful schools, we saw an increase in those areas as well. So we just want to continue with that trajectory. working with our students and our staff, and really just, again, like I said earlier, talking about having kids be leaders in the building. It's really cool. When I was leaving the building, we had a wrestling match happening at French today, and our parent group was there selling concessions, and not only were their parents there, but there was like 6 or 7 kids there that were helping out their parents doing concessions. So it was really cool to see, and we just want to see more of that, just getting kids more and more involved because this is their education. And I had one of the kids ask me, well, you know, hey, I want to go on to college. I said, well, hey, this is a great skill. Working right here, customer service skills. Those are some great skills to work on. Whether you're going to college or whether you're just being in life, being able to interact with people, it's such a huge skill that you can work on as a human being. Would you like to add anything else, Ms. Hanson?
I think also part of it, when I look at it, I remember last year's data, and it's all about perception and how the staff is feeling. I do believe a huge piece of that was, you know, there has been change of leadership. There has been a lot of things that can impact that percentage. I do believe highly on accountability when it comes not only to students, but also staff, and making sure, you know, we're modeling that behavior. So, but I think, you know, we have making so many good connections with the staff and training the staff in order to make those connections with the students. So I think that is also what is guiding our schools and how we represent Woodburn. One of the things that I always say is we're Woodburn, especially when we go and play French. At the end of the day, they're going to be Bulldogs, right? And that's the idea of it behind it. I even made a joke yesterday. I was like, I'm not going to buy from you guys because, you know, I'm not going to be supporting French. But I did, and I even bought some of the kids like from French, some pics out. It's okay. So we are training a staff with trauma-informed practices, reframing behavior training. At Valor, we did see a huge increase in the staff culture by 17%, which is huge. And I think, you know, implementing those practices last year took like it was hard for a lot of the stuff. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, it pays off to really like having those systems and creating system and really following those, everything that we're doing with fidelity, right? We're doing this and we're doing it together. And that is our model. Sometimes not everybody agrees to what we're going to be doing, but knowing that we're going in it as a team has been really important for the culture of the school and really creating that sense of belonging, not only with the students, right, but with the staff, and knowing that the families can feel welcome to come and share concerns or share things that are going great as well. We have gotten a lot of positive things coming out of that. We do positive calls home. I know I had some students ask me, when are you doing the positive referrals like that I'm going to share out? And so one of the Russian students came to me and was like, don't do it Friday because I can't have the snack on Friday. So we're going to move it. So, but it's really important to know those pieces. Like, it's really important for us to know, okay, we cannot do that day and I cannot do this. So I had to write it down because, you know, I want to be mindful of those things. But the fact that they're able to come and share that with us and like that they're able to communicate that, and they see us all the time out there. We have teachers who come and play basketball with the kids, and that adds to everything that we are trying to build at the school. And the fact that they're giving up their time, their prep, their lunch just to come and really talk to the students and like just meet them and hang out with them is really important. I think that has added so much value to what we do and on the day-to-day. Questions?
When it comes to culture at the high school, we have made some improvements, not as much as we would want it to, but let's keep in mind that this is only our 3rd year as a comprehensive school. So when it comes to students, we last year had 23%, this year 26%, which is pretty close to the typical school, so we're only a few points lower. And when it comes to staff, the staff last year was a 6%. So there was a huge growth this year to a 25%. How are we responding to data? So it has taken a lot of building systems, reflecting, refining, and collaborating with our administrative team as far as how are we going to make sure that we improve the areas that staff have identified. Some of them were like, we need to be part of the decision-making. We need to make sure that our feedback is considered. So what we did was make sure that every committee, every staff member in our school participates in a committee. It could be from leadership, attendance, PBIS, MTSS, ninth grade success, 10 to 12 grade success, AVID, safety committee, or it could be the social committee. So all the committees that we have, we meet with them, and these committees are led by an administrator. And so we gather their feedback and make sure that it's taken into account when we're making decisions, or it's a decision made in collaboration with the team. We have biweekly department head meetings, which is basically providing an update and any issues or concerns that are happening in the department, or any initiatives that we want to adopt. So it's really it's a good way to get ahead of the problems or identify what's going on or what are the needs that the departments are having. And so as far as positive culture, we have our weekly newsletter where we students can, teachers actually can recognize each other for anything that's either they did something for each other or they noticed something in another staff member, so we can include it in our newsletters. We have reduced the numbers of unnecessary meetings. And so this is meant also because we respect teachers' time. And so if we feel like it's something that can be either replaced with an email or something that can be explained in a different format that is not taking teachers' time, we're doing that. We're ensuring that professional development is actually meaningful and increasing the frequency of staff meetings. Initially, we had limited the number of staff meetings just because we had so many committees going on and other responsibilities. But the feedback was that staff wanted to spend more time together and collaborate just to develop those relationships. So we have increased that frequency. When it comes to staff with the students, the last board presentation we shared with you as far as the changes that we have made. And so that was from our moving to a block schedule, adding an additional lunch, increasing our safety. And so those are all changes that really benefited our students, how, they feel safe at school. The smaller lunches, give them that space to not being as crazy. We have open gym during first lunch. And so there have been some things that we're doing that it's allowing for students to spend more time with each other. Anything else on?
Excuse me, whoa, I don't know what that was. I think it's also, I've heard a lot of the questions about belonging, and I think it's important to note that the summary culture measure number that we're getting, we needed to pick something as a district. The belonging questions that we ask students are not a part of that culture section at all. In fact, the high school number, I was just looking at, there's 4 questions that go into that summary measure. 2 of them are students basically assessing their peers. So a lot of it's about, do my classmates care about school? So I think there's a lot of things that we all think of as being part of culture that aren't necessarily part of that number. And I think that's where diving into, and we can't do all of the questions here, but diving into some of those particular questions where you're seeing growth and seeing those specific questions are a way to do that. And I know we did that with our site council. We did a deep dive into all of the specific questions that come up. So I think thinking about that, if that's a question about how students are feeling in terms of belonging, that isn't necessarily part of what that culture measure is actually measuring. It's a separate section on the assessment. So, that's other good information as well. So.
I would also add that although the survey has really good questions, it's the reliability. Because last year we had 84% of our staff who took the survey. This year we had 100% of our staff taking it. So it's still a big difference. I mean, and still we were able to show huge growth, but there's a big difference on the numbers of staff who actually took the survey from one year to another. Questions? Elementary?
Thank you, team. The work there, is your foundational work to be able to reach those, that culture goal and to improve the conditions in our buildings. And we've seen that in the social emotional competencies, we've seen that in our culture, and we see that in our attendance as well. And this other metric that we're looking at is attendance, and we too are on track to meet our attendance goal. As a district, our district set the goal of 59% attendance. Right now, as a district, we're at 63%. So we're on track to meet our attendance goal. And we'll take a look at each of the levels and the work that they're doing to keep us there and to keep our kids in school. We know the best place for our kids to be is in school. Nobody's going to argue that. And we want to keep our kids here as often as possible.
So at the elementary level, last year we had 60% of our students were regular attenders, meaning that they attended at least 90% of the days. And this year, at the rate we're going right now, we have 67% of our students are regular attenders. So we're making progress in that area. At the elementary level, many of the things that I've already talked about and that we've talked about up here contribute to that attendance. The idea that promoting a really strong sense of belonging is a key ingredient to increasing student attendance. And those two together, sense of belonging plus attendance, are key ingredients to improving reading performance. So that all works together. We do a lot of things to promote that sense of belonging. One of the things that we focused on at the beginning of the year and has stuck all throughout the year is how teachers greet students at the door. And you might think, well, what's the big deal? Why do we need to even think about that? But how a student comes to the building and to the classroom, and the way teachers are really excited to see them makes a big difference. In fact, we had a kindergarten teacher today at a meeting who had received a message from a mother of one of her students who wanted her to know that her daughter wasn't going to be at school today because she was sick, but she really wanted to. Or she felt kind of bad because she knew how much her teacher was going to miss her. And that doesn't just happen. That happens because of strategies. It also happens because we have really warm, friendly teachers. And with that said, they're warm and friendly, and also there's strategies involved. So just thinking about how we promote that sense of belonging is really important. It's a little thing, greeting students at the door, and it goes a long way to make it. And that also helping students build relationships with each other, promoting relationships between among students at our school that might cross different grade levels as well. And we have ways that we do that. Then at the more system level, at our schools, we have each of our schools have attendance teams that meet regularly to review data. And as we mentioned previously, there's ways that we share strategies with each other. There's district attendance teams, and then there's some unique ways that we might approach it, because we're all trying to solve that at our schools. And then we share that with each other and learn from each other. I know Nellie Muir and Washington, for example, have had a little bit higher attendance than we did at Lincoln. So picking their brain to find out what it is that they're doing and incorporating some of those ideas can go a long way, making a difference, like through attendance competitions and things such as that students might get excited about, and promote some of that positive peer pressure with each other. But we want them to stay home if they really are sick. So, and feel kind of bad that they couldn't be there. Because we definitely want them there. They need to be there to learn. And then we have individual and classroom incentives, attendance awards, attendance recognitions, classroom incentives, whether it's working toward getting a popcorn party or I know at Lincoln we've just started this thing up where we have a net that is up above a door or right adjacent to a door that has a dolphin, like a stuffed animal dolphin in it. And every week, the grade level classroom that has the best attendance gets to have that dolphin on display. And it's something that they have a lot of pride. In fact, we have a fourth grade class that's had 3 weeks in a row of perfect attendance. And so some of those competitions, I don't know, we may have stolen that idea from one of the other schools, because there's some really good ideas out there that are going. So there's some ways that we have incentives that students might be working toward, ways to celebrate that dolphin or the lion or the Timberwolf. Those can go a long ways, those little tricks. And then also, if you read our newsletters, you see communications about attendance and promoting that and the importance, the correlation with attendance and academic achievement. And then that would be newsletters. There's also, for students that might struggle with attendance, we want to spend time trying to find out what's going on, understand, listen. So it also could include individual letters, home visits, a variety of things. And just to promote that sense of belonging, because we know those components, again, lead to strong reading scores. And when students do well in school, they'll be more likely to attend, or they will tend to. So those are some of the things, just touching on the many things that we do at the elementary level.
So look at our data from a couple of years ago, right, or from last year to this year at the middle school level, right? We saw a pretty significant increase from 56% to 62%. And so some of the things that we've been doing and how we're responding to the data is, again, we're having attendance team meetings where they're divided based upon tardies and absences, and they're categorized into different tiers. So you have your tier 1, which is everybody, tier 2, and tier 3. Some things that we're doing for like our tier 3 students, specifically, we're doing specific attendance plans, meetings with parents, specific rewards for those individual students. For our tier 2 group, we're looking at phone calls made home and also sending attendance letters. Our attendance team, actually, this last couple of weeks, we've been looking at doing empathy interviews with our students that are designated at risk. And the system kind of tells us what that at risk is, which basically is if kids missed more than 3 days 3 days in the last 2 weeks. We have a staff member, so we divide it up between our counselors, our behavior specialists, and a social worker, and they have a empathy interview that comes out of Power School, and then we just ask kids questions and see what's going on, and then after that, we'll also have some parent meetings for our kids that are experiencing a lot of absenteeism, and for whatever reason, right? And at this time of year, we have students that are coming back from family trips. So understanding that, but we also, we're held accountable to, we need our students here 90% of the time. So if we're aware that the student is going to be gone for a prolonged period of time, for example, we have a student that's going to be going out for surgery at the end of the week. So we're trying to be proactive about getting him his work, getting him set up on Google Classroom, get him a Chromebook, so that way when he's out for those 2 weeks recovering from his surgery, it's not a matter of like, oh, shoot, he needs to catch up all this work. He already has the work ahead of time. So communicating with the teachers as well. And some of the tier 1 things that we do for all kids, right? That sense of belonging, right? Some examples, mariachi band, danza folklorico, I always butcher that. Leadership, gaming club, which we have at both schools, satellite gaming club, mentorship from Shemetka, ticket displays, so at both schools, we have Raptors tickets at Valor, and at French, we have Spartan Shields. Excuse me. And we also do PBIs incentives and rewards. We just did a good news slip, which at the end of last month, we had teachers looking, nominating kids for this good news slip. And at the end of the day, oh, thank you. At the end of the day, we had ice cream for the kids. It's amazing what ice cream does, especially for middle schoolers. They really want to work for that. So we asked teachers to nominate 2 students. So we gave out a whole bunch of ice cream at the end of the day, although it's kind of ironic how cold it was, but the kids still love the ice cream sandwiches. So those are just some of the things that we're doing. And then of course we have our accountability system. Kids aren't making it. They have lunch detention. They don't particularly like lunch detention, especially with me. I don't know why. Gosh. And then we also have after school detentions, and then also Saturday schools. That's some of the accountability pieces.
So when you say we, this is for both schools? This is your school only?
For which one?
for what you just showed?
Just an examples that we use either at both schools or one of the schools.
I think for the most part, we try to align. We have different strategies that we have to implement depending on the students that we have. We do offer Saturday school, like not really offer, but it's not really optional. We try to make it work. The parents actually bring the students, which is, I think it's another 2 hours that they have to get up early and they really don't like it. We do have a typical student who might say, oh, I can make it because I'm like, oh, you will make it. We will make it happen. Don't worry. If you don't have a ride, I'll pick you up. So we try to really motivate them to come to school and making sure that, that they're present to learn. And we try to explain the why when we have those meetings. I have had a couple meetings with parents of those specific students who are not coming, and we do know that the problem sometimes is not the student, is the parents. A lot of the times, obviously, the parents have to leave to work, and we want to make sure that we are motivating the students to come to school. We do have some students who definitely struggle in the morning, so we do offer different strategies. One of them could be like, oh, we'll buy you an alarm clock, or we will pick you up for the first 3 days, and then we'll figure it out. If you cannot make it to school in time, we'll make it happen for you type of deal here. We also, I do have some students who will be the usual, if I come to school for 5 days, will you buy me McDonald's? Yes, I'll get you your 10 chicken nuggets. Just make it to school. So I think, it really depends on the students. So we really try to be, to respond to the need, right? A lot of the students, I know it sounds really interesting, like that a student will come to school for McDonald's, but a lot of the kids don't have the opportunity to have that, and it's really important for them to have it. And then a lot of the students will ask me, can I have lunch with you? And I'm like, yeah, let's have lunch together. They love because I get a lot of like fruit with tahini, and they love that. I love it too. So just like we can share that. So it's really it really depends on each student, and we try to really do a little bit of both support and accountability, and we do believe in that. It's really important. We had a dance, for example, planned this Friday during advisory, and we had to cancel it because we didn't meet the goal, and they were so mad. And I was like, well, like you can still earn it, eventually, but we also have expectations, and I don't believe in giving in, and they know that. So I think that is really important. I think, the teachers were like, are we really canceling the dance? Like, yeah, this is the goal. We didn't meet the goal, unfortunately, so we have to cancel the dance. So it's like, and the kids were like, some of the kids were kind of happy. And then I was like, and for those of you who are happy, you're going to be working through advisory. And they were like, what? I was like, oh yeah. We don't have a dance anymore. So it's a lot of, work, and really it takes the whole staff to really make sure that they're coming. We are incorporating, actually I have my attendance presentation tomorrow morning, and that's the piece that I already connected with leadership, because we do bring all of these concerns to leadership and we try to work together. So one of the things that we're doing is we're gonna present to the staff this idea of communicating with those students who are not coming to school and making that connection, so they will get to select their students and really connect with those students of like, well, I'm concerned about this kid, and I'm like, okay, let's be part of that solution. Like, how can we connect with them? You are the teacher, you have them every day. Because one of the things that we realized is the attendance team cannot connect with all the students, because there are a lot. I was checking our attendance rate for today, and I know that we presented at 62%, but as of today, it's at 65% of regular attenders. So we are trying to get there, and we are trying to make sure that we're making those connections and having those important meetings, not only with the counselors, but it really depends on, who is gonna make that connection. So we sit down and we really see each kid one by one, and then we go over who can make this connection with this student. And we do have those tier 3 who usually come to me just because we have tried to make the other connections with the counselors, and now it turns into something a little bit different. That conversation becomes more of a contract and like, what are we doing in order to be here?
Question? Thank you. Oh, Lisa has a question.
Gaming club. Tell me about gaming club. I've missed that announcement apparently.
So it was like last year's Satellite Gaming Club. It's offered through a partnership with the Woodburn, the city of Woodburn.
Like
and-
the place off of, is it Boone's Ferry?
No,
The
so
club? No?
it actually, so it takes place at French on Wednesdays. And then at Valor, it's on Tuesdays, Thursdays.
Okay.
So.
After school or
After
during
school, yep. And they're there from 3:30 to 4:45, or 4:40, so that way the kids can catch a 4:45 activity bus.
Great.
So that way they're not there till 6.
The library has a Dungeons and Dragons group on Mondays, if anybody wants to support that.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify that Woodburn High School does have a Saturday school and it's voluntary. And we do have about 100 to 140 students. So as far as attendance, our team has joined forces with our district attendance team, which is in partnership with the Willamette ESD. We have formed a community of practice, and that is just basically to collaborate and receive training as far as like how are we going to address attendance and what are the factors that are really impacting our students. Last time we presented, you requested some additional data. We brought that for you tonight, but for the sake of time, we are going to give you an overview and we'll give you a handout for you to take home tonight and read it after this meeting. So the overview we have, the report actually includes some data from the Youth Truth Survey and how it is impacting our students' attendance. So you're going to see some data from last year and some data from this year. But right now, we have just an overview, and Ms. Dixon has prepared some attendance for us.
So these were the same categories we looked at last time. As we discussed, part of what our attendance committees and our MTSS groups as well are paying attention to attendance as well. But we talked about how we like to disaggregate the data. That helps us to target in. When you're talking about 1,700 high school students and 40% are, not regularly attending right now, that's a lot of students. I think that it's also really important to note, I ran a little bit, is that the numbers that will count in those state ratings, there's 140 days that are included. So you're talking about the difference between 13 or 14 days absence is the difference between being chronically absent or being a regular attender. As of today, a student who has missed 9 days of school is a regular attender, and a student who has missed 9.5 days is no longer a regular attender. So these are where, we're getting it, we have to get at the margins, and we also really need to look at where do we target those interventions and supports. So one of the good things that we noticed is when we're looking at last year compared to this year, we've seen growth across the board in almost all of these areas. We do have some segments where we saw a drop, and I think that's where we're really looking and saying, where do we need to target more attention? Is there something specific to that grade level or that group of students that's needed? And then the other, my little triangle there is also looking at it. Maybe all of those grade levels are making growth, but is it equitable growth across? Do we have one group that's made 1% of growth and another group that's made 8% of growth? And if so, how do we target that work? So these are the trends that we're seeing so far. Oh, I don't have to do it on my laptop. That won't help. And these are the same categories we presented on back in November. So this is kind of where things are at. And then what we do as a committee is we look at what is maybe impacting those specific groups. How do we provide support for those specific groups? And again, a lot of this is about, a student who's at 85, the difference between 85 and 90.01, which is what you have to be at to be a regular attender, is 7 days across the year. So how do we get a student to come maybe one more day every month? And I think that's where you get those students maybe who are on the edge, who just need that little bit of support. We know we're going to have students who, for a variety of reasons, are not going to be regular attenders. And we still want to support growth for those students, of course. But I think it's going to where it's actionable and trying to figure out how do we target the support and what specific needs are there? And we can, answer any specific questions about groups. But we do have some good news, and I won't, stay too long on it, which is 189 students, 26.4% of all the chronically absent high schoolers who were here last year are now regular attenders. And on average, they've increased their attendance rate by 11.7% this year. In addition, we have another 38.2%, 274 students. They're still chronically absent, but they have improved their attendance this year. And in that group, the average attendance growth is 10.1%. So, that's a group of students who potentially by the end of the year might get to that regular attendance rate. The group that we're most concerned about right now would be those students who are chronically absent, who were last year, and their attendance has actually dropped. And in this case, at the high school level, we're talking about 92 students. And again, that's a lot of students, but it's also a number of students that we feel like we can really take action on. How do we step in and help those students? And that's kind of the breakdown of who are those 92 students, and what are some of the needs that might be there? What are the trends, and how do we get them what they need to make the difference and turn things back around so we're going in the right direction? And that's kind of where we're going. Again, we presented at the last meeting. We don't want to, belabor or go over all of the activities and things that are happening, but the CTE programs, you'll see in the packet of extra information, a lot of those areas that we talked about. There's a Youth Truth question about students who have considered dropping out, and it's about 18% of students and seniors. We saw a 38% drop in students saying that it was because they didn't feel like school was relevant to their lives. So these are students who are maybe they've considered this year dropping out, but it's not because of a lack of relevance in their classes. That was one of the top reasons that students considered last year, that in jobs. So that speaks a lot to the changes in the program, the move to the block schedule, more elective classes, more CTE classes, really helping students to feel like what I'm doing in school is really going to matter to my future. And they may still be struggling. They may still have felt at moments like they, might consider dropping out, but they realize that school is important and they're still here. So there, like I said, there's a lot of more detailed information. We don't want to go too deep, but are there any specific questions that come up?
I'm just curious, and you may not have an answer today, that's okay. I'm curious if, like students who attend the Willamette Academy, right, because they're connected to something every day and they have to be a part of, do you see a difference in attendance with students attending Willamette Academy?
Yeah, Willamette Career Academy gives us some notes. I'm trying to remember the exact percentage because they did give us a breakdown. They do attendance separately there, but I believe out of the 80 students who went, we got a report. I believe there were only 4 who were chronically absent. I may be misquoting those, so I will come back to it. But it's a high percentage of students who are attending regularly there, and that program in particular requires them to get up extra early, potentially ride the bus to school or get dropped off early, take a bus and go all the way to Salem. So attendance is quite good, but we're also seeing it among the students who are on campus as well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. If you want to do a deep dive.
Oh, thank you.
Kudos team for that outstanding work again, and another goal which we're on track to meet. And we have a final couple goals that are specific to the high school around the 9th grade on track and graduation, kind of where we're trending, which is another areas of excitement and where we're on track to get to.
Yeah, these are really great news. So with all the changes, the systematic changes that we have implemented and interventions across grade levels, we have seen great improvements at the 9th grade level and at the 12th grade level. So we're going to take a few minutes to compare from last year to this year, and the programs that students who have shown improvement, the interventions that they have received. So Amanda, she's the administrator for the 9th grade level, and she's going to share some of that data with us.
So the first chart represents our ninth grade on track data for semester one. So on track means that they earned at least 3 credits during the semester. Last year, so that's this year's 10th graders, 71.4% of students were on track by the end of semester one. And at the end of the year, they ended at 75% on track. For this year, we're currently at 80.1% of ninth graders being on track after first semester, so that's an 8.7 percentage points higher than last year. So the second visual is the interventions that we have specifically had for ninth grade to support ninth grade on track. The first intervention is ninth grade Jumpstart, which is a week-long intervention before the start of the school year. It's in August. That focuses on helping students learn what it means to be a high school student, such as earning credits, joining clubs, how to organize their materials, understanding what CTE programs are. And so 90.8% of students who attended Jumpstart are on track. After semester one, Freshman Victory is another intervention. It's a class that ninth graders attend. Students were selected if they have low grades and moderate attendance in middle school. There's 4 sections that we offer during the school day. And so 78.8% of students enrolled in Freshman Victory are on track, which again, this is a targeted group of students who are already at risk going into high school. So then another area is that we have our MTSS teams at grade levels. So for ninth grade MTSS, of the students that were staffed by the MTSS team, 72.7% were ended up on track. That means they were identified at quarter one as being at risk of not being on track. And so these are interventions and supports that the team provided. And then the last is Saturday school. And we had 52.9% of students who attended Saturday school are on track. If students attended 3 or more sessions, 71.4% were on track at the semester. And again, students were recommended or invited to come to Saturday school. And again, it's voluntary, but they were invited to come based on like failing grades or areas that they needed to like retest or had work that they needed to complete. So we've also had some ninth grade specific events like the tailgate before a bonfire, and we had another one before basketball games. We've done specific advisory lesson for ninth grade around understanding credits. And there's also a ninth grade success team that needs to review data and look at our systems. And they collaborate with Willamette ESD as part of the 9GOT or ninth grade on track team.
And you may wonder why we kind of have each intervention percentage, like we're tracking it just because we have to make sure that we're going to allocate our funding and if our interventions are actually producing the results that we're expecting. For my the next slide is actually really exciting. From seniors on track, at this point, we have 94% of our seniors are on track. We met with our with parents I believe last week or a week and a half ago, and we had an orientation like going through all the senior events, and also we help parents kind of going through transcripts, letting them know who was on track, what work was needed, and counselors were available to answer any questions. So it's really exciting to see that last year we had an 84% on track at this time. And this year we have 94% on track, and that's counting success students. So, and this is for the current cohort. Questions?
Congratulations, that's exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Very exciting.
Good job. Go kids.
Yeah, there's a lot of great work happening in our schools and a lot of progress being made as we continue to trend in the right direction in many of these goals, and we're on track to meet many of them, and lots of excitement. And yeah, go kids. They're doing some phenomenal work, and they're doing phenomenal work with the support of our educators, with the support of our administrators, who are just continuing to create systems of support to get kids to be as successful as possible and meeting all of our goals that we have. As I point behind me on our strategic plan. So like, yeah, kudos to this team and everybody who's behind them. for the work that's being done to get our kids where we want them to be.
I had a parent today that showed me a interview, that invitation to an interview for his student who is in success, who is struggling, but now they're waiting for their interview to buy literacy certificate. So that was one proud dad.
Very nice.
Well, I remember last time when you first presented, numbers were low in different areas, and so I want to acknowledge the hard work that you're all doing, and just have been seeing the improvement in what you presented last time and today. So thank you for that. Any other questions? Comments?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
For 5. Have a break.
Can we wait? We have,
While we shift gears.
yes.
Okay.
So we are a little behind, but, what we have.
We're 5 minutes ahead.
Oh, are
We're
we?
ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, we're,
We're
right.
ahead.
That's
We're ahead.
why he was asking for the
Oh.
break.
But you're not counting.
Well, I should use the restroom. So either you move on without me or
Take a
you take a 5.
Sure, we can take a 5 minutes.
Take a,
We need to move.
yeah, we could,
Go ahead.
I'm just going to use the restroom.
I think we're on that.
I love your sweater.
Thank you.
It's for, yep.
was really great. That was the best news I've heard in a long time. I mean, as far as improvements. Yeah.
All right. So welcome back from your 5-minute break. Our next item is board debrief. As agreed, we agreed to watch the Board Governance Essential webinar, as well as the Roles and Responsibilities webinar. And I guess we can start with the first webinar, the Essentials webinar. And just any thoughts, anything that stood out to you, anything that you want to implement?
With a great pressure hearing, seeing Vince, and even though you taught that same course at the other.
One of the
in
conferences?
August,
Mhm.
at the conference, so it was very helpful. The fact of us being not the captain, but assisting the captain.
Of the cruise ship, yeah.
The Paradise.
Can we get a cruise
I
ship?
liked that.
It's a big project to turn it, right?
Yeah, going to Paradise.
We
The
we
students did
commissioned the
that.
journey, we set the destinations, yeah, on the cruise ship. Yeah.
Good job.
Did you have anything else, Rosie? Oh, it was just a good, because we have gone through this, I think, a time or two, but it was just a good reminder for me. It just puts me into check about how we impact students, what we do here impacts students, and how we show up to a board meeting. How we show up to a board meeting affects how the board works, which affects the board culture, which affects Woodburn School District culture, which affects our classrooms and our instructors, which impacts our students. And so it's just a good reminder for me to show up and do a good job here. And then it kind of kicks me over to some of the things that lead to negative impacts that I personally could potentially have on a student by being a bad board member, by having disorderly meetings, being disrespectful towards each other, trying to advance my own agenda, not being focused on policy. When the staff and your community don't know the board, that leads to distrust. And so if I'm not out being a member of the community, I'm not being a good board member. And then also, if your board is not relying on the superintendent for advice and guidance, that we're not being a good board. We really need to rely on our superintendent because, again, they brought up a lot, you're trained on pedagogy where I'm trained in geology. So I'm gonna rely on you to guide us on how to move forward on some of this stuff. And there's emphasized more than a few times that the key concept of the board is that we need to just remember that all students can learn and succeed. That needs to be our kind of our North Star for everything we do. Again, they go over the 12 standards. I don't want to, I could read them off, or we can go look them up on your own. Also, it's really good reminder to go over the, I think there are 6 practices of high performing boards. I think those are good things to review. I have a few more pages of stuff here, but I think those are my main takeaways.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I agree.
But and Cherry,
No, I
I just
agree.
feel anybody else's
100%.
stuff.
And I mean, even like, just to piggyback what you said about like to trust, the superintendent and, that he's the captain, but even more than that, to trust the professionals that are working in our schools, that they have gone to college and they have taken their jobs very seriously and they have gone through, applying for the jobs. And, just as they've given these reports tonight, they're taking these careers very seriously and they go to work every day and they are equipping and learning more and they are in the field of their choice and this is their profession and that's not my profession and that's not ours And I just feel like one of the things that, Vincent was reiterating over and over was respect and care, respect and care. And even at the close of the video was just, respect and care. And I felt like, even when he was talking a lot about, the relations among the board, but I think that is just key about everything. Us with each other, us in board meetings, us with students, us with staff, peers. I mean, community engagement, everything about it, having a smile on our face and greeting people and saying hello in the supermarket and, when we go to school visits and when we see other parents and just we are a representative of the board. And I think that, just respect and care, just like when you were talking about, people knowing who you are. That sometimes we don't mean to be grumpy, but it happens.
Well,
Our picture's there.
if you
and
catch
we're on
me at the
student
at the
handbook,
store,
and- Yeah, I mean, we're on the student handbook. People, people do know. And I just think it was a great refresher and there were so many things. It was just like a big bucket of golden nuggets. The whole, both of them were really good.
Yeah, I feel like I could watch that 10 times over.
Well, I
and
watched
still
it,
grab-
I watched
still
it
get new things
twice
out of it because
and I was
it's-
like, I need to
It's
watch
pretty
it again.
dense.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things.
I watched
that-
it twice, just in the,
Because
know.
I was going through my notes and it's like, yeah, I've already actually been through this and I have notes
Me
from the
too.
last time I've
I was
taken
like,
this and it's still,
again? And then I watched it again
but
after that.
if it's not something that you're constantly going back to, it's not something, it's really hard to commit to your long-term memory if you're not
Mhm.
practicing it and
That's
remembering it. It's just, so.
We need to remind ourselves and watch it again in order for us to emphasize in a refresher course as to the whole meaning behind a board member and who we are as cruise ship members and
And how important
and-
our role here
Yeah.
is.
as representatives for the district, how our roles and responsibilities are, oops, that's going on to the next one, but anyway, it's to be us as a team, how we are supposed to work together, collaborate, and to the end goal for our students to be super achievers, of course.
In essence, we're a reflection of the greater Woodburn community. And I would guess that the board is a reflection of the cohesiveness as well as the divisiveness. And that we're asking our administrators and teachers and children to rise above those challenges and the same walk your talk, right? And it's easier said than done. It really is. But I think that I love that seeking to understand and that we may disagree, but we can understand that that other person is coming from their best intentions and their own experience, and to have respect for that. And that it may be different and we may ultimately disagree, but we can do that respectfully and still warmly and, because we're all working towards the same goals. We all want to see the same positive outcomes.
And if we don't show the respect, how the kids are going to be, how are they going to know it? Because they basically learn from
Yeah.
us as parents, as leaders, as adults, as members, as community representatives, and so forth.
Well, and that's why it's so important that we do speak up,
Exactly.
because we are bringing individual perspectives, and I really appreciated you bringing up the holidays.
And like you say, as respect, like if we don't show respect, how are they ever going to know
Right.
to also follow that role
Mhm.
and be better community members, leaders, and future entrepreneurs and otherwise.
And just to add what everybody has shared, I think one of the things that stood out to me is, what happens here, in here and outside of this space trickles into eventually the classroom even the next day. And so, again, being aware of I think I heard you say, Lisa, like how we walk or talk or walk. Like that's important inside of this space and outside of this space, because people do know who you are at the grocery store or anywhere else. And so the slide that stood out to me was the school board's impact on students, because at the end of the day, we're here for students and student outcomes. Thank you for sharing. Any thoughts on the following webinar?
Well, Janet's a great.
Are you proud of us yet? I do want to say one thing. This was a good refresh for me because, you know, I think I sent an email to the board and I was kind of like, nobody responded to me. Well, actually, good job for not responding to me.
I thought we were
actually,
supposed
because-
to.
Because no, yeah, and so I need to remember my roles and responsibility and public meeting laws and emails, and so thank you for that reminder. I think Courtney, you were like, I don't think we're supposed to respond to you. I'm like,
He was like,
I was like, oh yeah.
nobody even responded back to me, and I was like, I do.
So you know what? So I feel like I can't. This needs to be on my routine for me to watch this, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, because it's hard to commit all of this stuff to your long-term memory if you're not practicing it all the time. So I'm a new board member, so this is all new to me. I guess while I'm talking, some other things that is from your session, but there's actually studies. Owlsbury 2008, test scores decline as the board turnover increases. Like, so we really affect what goes on out on our student body.
Right.
And then board conflict equals negative district performance. There's a direct result. So it just really inspired me and reminded me that what we're doing here is important and it matters. And it helped put me in check that I need to do a better job. So.
Well, thank you for recognizing that and sharing that. Appreciate it.
And just to go back on the board rules, governance, the policies that Vince reflected, you know, we do cover those, but it's like we need to remind and refresh ourselves on the many policies that are part of our board when we pledged and swore, and then, but as a refresher, we need to go back and read those and remind ourselves of those policies. Like, for instance, we are community members, and as our roles and responsibilities, if someone does approach us in this restaurant or at the store or whatnot, or games or like city council meetings. But anyway, the fact is that there's a process. We don't take authority over Superintendent Juan Larios. He and Jenny, they are the proper channels. We have to explain to them, even though they don't feel like they're being heard, there's still a process of where we stand, our responsibilities, and versus the proper channels and the policies that need to follow in order for the end game, the end result to be effective.
I've noticed there seems to be a lot of not following policy in our greater communities, and how disrespectful it is to disregard policy and just do. That's what's really hit me, and I haven't ever understood that, had a value for that, as it's not just something you got to do like a bureaucracy, but there's actually a component of respect.
Yep.
And there's a reason those policies have come up, and so I will do my best.
And there's a reason that those policies are there. They're there to guide us. They're there to sustain a proper structure, you know, not so it's everybody just willy-nilly doesn't follow them because they don't feel like they have to, or it hasn't been enforced before. But again, like Naomi said, it's a trickle effect. It affects the performance of the staff, the students, and the graduation and the bottom math and reading end games. So
other thoughts or takeaways? All right, seeing none, thank you all for participating and sharing what stood out to you. Moving on to board calendar. We have here listed some dates for our next board meetings. We have February 25th. February 27th, we have a school visit to Washington and preschool. March 11th, a board meeting. And March 13th, board school visits to Woodburn High School and the Success School. Any future agenda items?
I just have a question. Did anybody else get an invitation to the family blocks in March?
Was
Okay.
it on our email?
In your
I
email?
think I did.
It was an RSP.
Something?
Not sure.
It was for March 12th at the Salem Convention Center, family building blocks.
Maybe not.
Yeah. It's a fundraiser, happy hour kind of event thing.
I'll have to check my email. All right. Any topics of interest you'd like to see on the agenda?
Well, like I mentioned, the city council meeting, I've just been attending, monitoring, and because of all the changes, improvements in the community, the approved projects and so forth. As leadership, and I know like Ballard has a great leadership program, so does the high school. But one thing that nobody's mentioned, and in the past, the high school did have a board member from the school as a member on the planning committee, as well as on the library committee, and they do have student board positions. Of course, I'm trying to encourage my girls to join, but
Oh, these are
It-
student
it's a student,
positions at the city?
yeah, with the city council meeting, there's also a position with the planning committee as well as the library committee.
Oh, I do not know that.
It's just a great engagement for them to build leadership and for them to add to the resume, be involved in the community. Because like you mentioned, the library, it's got lots of amazing programs and it has so many beneficial activities, programs, reading programs and so forth.
And they're willing to develop things in community with people. I spoke with them over the summer and they were willing to kind of, well, we'll figure it out to be able to do it. And, we know particularly boys who struggle academically or don't, those keep them busy. And you learn skills and social skills and you learn information when you're hanging out. And it's just a really good protective factor in kids' lives to be in extracurricular. Not everybody's a sports person.
Especially like we, not just Woodburn District, but in the state of Oregon, we have lots of kids that are struggling reading, but with the library reading program, the summer reading program, I've just seen immense improvement with, of course, I had to reel in my girls, but just being involved in that reading program because there's always a catch and hook and catch type of thing that we need to involve our students in.
I'm going to circle back to future agenda items. Is that something that
I feel like we
you
should.
want to share? That sounds maybe that's something that you can share with Superintendent Larios and maybe he can.
Yeah, I
share
can,
that
I can send you
information.
some of that information that they have. But I wish like somehow we can engage the high school. It's more for the high school. I wish it was for the middle school as well, but it's more for high school students to be involved in those committees because they have that special position specifically for a student committee member.
So any thoughts around, so we're talking about agenda items, but I don't know that that would fall on an agenda item. Any thoughts on how you can respond to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to collect the opportunities there are for students to engage in different committees in the community, and we could push those out and share those with our kids. But are you asking Rosie to have like a student representative on the board or?
I'm asking if there's a way we can engage our high school students to kind of push them in that, if they're even aware that our city has these opportunities.
I think that would be a partnership that would come through like Jesse Como, Emily Duran, those people to bring it forth and then promote it maybe with Jonas at the library at Woodburn High School.
Right.
And I mean,
So
posters.
maybe it's not a future agenda.
information.
So it sounds like it's something.
Yeah. If you send me some things, Rosie, that you're seeing that you think are of a high interest or great for our kids in the community, then we could share those out with the appropriate schools. Encourage them to get those kids, get students into those positions, advertise them.
Woodburn Community Facebook page.
There you go. Good on Facebook.
You know, what I hear you saying, Rosie, is really speaking to that enrichment that I spoke about last week, that I would like to foster. And that's putting that real life to why are we doing what we're doing in school? It's to be a contributor to society as well as pursue your own interests. I think there's also, isn't there a component of encouraging, if you're interested in education for teachers with Chemeketa at the high school level? I think that's a great idea of a student board representative, or they have that on a lot of different other things.
Well, just like Willamette Career Academy,
Yeah.
as well as Chemeketa Jumpstart. It's just that engagement in order to get the kids to attend school, to finish school, to some sort of engagement. But again, that's on a different topic.
So since we don't have any future agenda items to add to our list.
Could I add one? I've been looking at a lot of research around the phones situation, and there's direct correlation with our youth, this explosion of anxiety and just mental health struggles. And it really started about 2013. And I was reading a study, it's a new book out by a professor at Harvard, and there's direct correlations, and there's a big, he's trying to spearhead a movement of no phones until 8th through 9th grade, no social media, and please, at my house, I got a problem. I'm not saying I'm good at this, but I believe it is fundamentally changing our society, and it's not for the good.
Oh, it's an impact.
It's a problem, and I would love to see Woodburn. You do hear other districts that are taking stances on this, and I would like to see Woodburn do this. And really, I don't believe. I mean, I think we as parents all know there's something wrong, but I don't think that we're drawing the correlations to our kids' lives. And one of the supplications of the study is that we have overprotected our children in the real life, and we have not protected them at all in their virtual life. And I think that we have an opportunity as a school district to lead out in our children's. We've spent, almost an hour on social emotional health and whatnot, and I just think that that would be a really great thing to look into and to see if that's something our district, if there's resources around it, and just help better educate our parents as well as the kids themselves.
I can speak to that. I think I would suggest, we've had that conversation before. I want to say the high school presented on that. I
Okay.
could be wrong.
There's someone
But,
coming soon.
Oh, good.
I don't know.
About
Isn't-
phones?
Yeah, about this exact subject
Okay.
to Woodburn. Did you read
There's
that?
a presentation, I think, being done at the library. I
Oh,
think it
the
is,
community.
around the social media awareness or something along those lines.
Mhm.
But our schools do have like a cell phone policy or
Yep.
practice in place
Mm.
that does include cell phones being stored volume off at a site in classrooms and hallways. I shared this early with the board at the start of the year, and I'd be happy to reshare it to get it fresh on people's minds. If that's what we're seeking, if we're seeking a deeper conversation, we could discuss that, what the
Right.
intent is.
Well,
the
I think
request
that's
is.
a
I could
start.
definitely share the
I
policy and
think that's a
practice.
beautiful start and an appropriate start, but I'd like to go deeper, because I think that this is a problem. Our our entire trajectory of adulthood has changed. Because, you know, it's a problem. And I think that we, as a school, have an opportunity as a district to speak into that because it impacts academics as well as social emotional.
So would it be helpful if you met with Superintendent Larios to learn what the school district has done and is currently doing and then
Well,
continue
I
to
think
amplify
I
it?
am, the reason I asked previously about the cell phones is that it wasn't being practiced at all as of last year. Much, right? I mean, it was very inconsistent, if at all. And so that's why I asked about it, but I am aware of the newer policies. The question really was, are they being enforced? And I was pleased to hear they are.
Yeah, this is a new practice that was put into place. There was a group, the school worked really intently with different stakeholders, families and students to come up with a practice and staff that would be supported. And so they
Right.
developed this and launched this new practice or policy for this year.
That's great. So anyway, I don't know if that's something we want to look at too, as far as more understanding the research and new recommendations around it, the brain science or what, or if that's something to provide for administration and teachers. I don't know. But I am proposing that we as a school board would take a position of leadership on that.
In addition to the policy that's already been in.
Yeah. Which is really, it's an educational, just more educating everybody, including the students, on these things. You know, we use them for everything. Time, place, and, you know, how many hours are these people on whatever it is? And it's not that you're doing necessarily anything horrible, but it's what you're not doing when you're on your phone. And I know this because personally I've experienced it, and we understand that the dopamine hits that we're getting, super addictive, but it's a synthetic form of dopamine essentially, and it's not meeting these kids' needs.
So you want to educate the parents? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, I
Or
just
do you
think
want-
that to put out more, for us of all, as a board, to become more informed, and that, again, to trickle down on our administrative and the policies and the teachers, and just how can this be really addressed in a deeper way? I think that would serve our children and us as a larger community. And I'm not sure exactly how that would go about, and I recognize that, okay, that's at home behavior, we can't legislate that, but we can educate people around those things. And there's new research coming out on deeper, more comprehensive levels.
Mhm.
And I think we would do well to.
I mean, I do hear you,
Mhm.
but I also hear in my head other priorities, which I'm not saying this isn't a
Right.
priority. So I'm wondering if it would help you maybe to meet with Superintendent Larios
Sure.
to
And I'm
tell
not
them what
saying,
those
right,
things are, and
at
then
some point in
add
time,
that.
right? I'm not suggesting this be a next one, or, you know, I mean, that I'm hoping to plant a seed about that as being an agenda item at some point in time.
I mean, it's definitely has been a conversation.
Well, I guess first, I would like to see what are the results of the current policy, the current cell phone policy, and what changes have we seen from that? What's the feedback from how things are going from the first year of having this new policy, and maybe some feedback from teachers, if more changes are needed, and how things are going with the current policy. I think that would be maybe a good starting spot.
Well,
So
it
having-
sounds like maybe that would be like a fall presentation, because
Yeah,
I
maybe
Yeah.
so.
feel like this is the first year they're implementing
it's-
that.
Sure, that makes
mean,
sense. Yeah.
Get
I
a
can see that.
status update, because this is the first year
Right.
at our attempt at taking that deeper look at
Right,
things.
well, and again, I'm not questioning the current policy, because I don't know what we would do more really, other than not at lunches, but that's not my point. My point being is that we, as leaders and educators, really wrap our brain around the significance of this. That it isn't just a matter of, well, we can't have them during office hours, but to understand fundamental changes that are going on. And what are the proactive steps that we can take?
Jenny, can we add that to the list? Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So moving on.
Yeah, like the science of
Yeah.
of what goes on, the neuroaction,
Right.
like of the dopamine, like you
Right.
mentioned, like understanding it at a deeper level.
Yeah.
The screen addiction
Right.
and more awareness to that because I see it in my own 11-year-old.
Yeah.
When you take that screen away,
You see a reaction, right?
I mean, it's like an addict.
That's why you do it easy and just don't give them a phone.
I know.
It's-
If I had to
it's
do
a-
it over.
It's an issue. So nobody's saying it's not. an
I'm
issue,
here, yeah.
or
I
It's an
mean,
issue, so.
It is.
Okay, I think we might be ready to move on. Yeah, okay. So moving on to executive session. So at this time, the Board of Directors of Woodburn School District will now move into executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602I to review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the Chief Executive Officer of any public body, a public officer, employee, or staff member who does not request an open hearing.